To all our loyal viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, welcome back. Today's story shows how one small discovery led to uncovering a wife's web of lies. We're grateful for your support. Let's get started. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Chauncey Cervantes' home office. His fingers traced the architectural plans spread across his custom design desk, checking measurements for the Downtown Cultural Center project. The clean lines and innovative use of space would make this his firm's landmark achievement, assuming his business partner Rick hadn't mishandled the client meeting again. A ringtone shattered his concentration. Carrie's personalized tuned the first few bars of Sweet Child O' Mine that she'd insisted on programming herself. His 13-year-old daughter should be enjoying spring break at their Lake Tahoe vacation house with her mother and younger brother. "Daddy?" Carrie's voice trembled. Chauncey's hand stilled on the blueprints. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I saw something awful." Her breath hitched. "Mommy, she's with Uncle Rick at our vacation house." The pencil in his other hand snapped. "What do you mean with Uncle Rick?" "They're saying horrible things about you." Carrie's voice dropped to a whisper. "And they're doing things I shouldn't see. I recorded it. I'm sending you the video." Chauncey's phone buzzed with the incoming file. "Where are you right now?" "In my bedroom. Tony's in his room too. Mommy thinks we're playing games online. Stay there. Don't let them know you've contacted me." His voice remained steady despite the rage building in his chest. "Are you and Tony safe?" "Yes, but Daddy, it's bad. The things they're saying about you. I'm going to watch what you sent. Call me immediately if anything changes." "I love you, Carrie." "Love you too, Daddy." The video started playing on his phone. His wife Miriam, the woman he'd built his life around for 15 years, wrapped in the arms of Rick Barnes. In the great room Chauncey had designed himself, with its sweeping views of Lake Tahoe that had inspired countless family memories. "Chauncey's so predictable." Miriam's voice dripped with contempt. "Always at the office, always with his precious projects. He makes it so easy." Rick's laugh echoed through the phone's speaker. The great architect, too busy building other people's dreams to notice his own house crumbling. The kids barely see him anymore. "It'll be simple to prove he's an absent father." Miriam stretched languorously on the custom leather sofa, Chauncey's anniversary gift to her last year. "The courts love giving custody to the primary caregiver. And once we have control of the firm..." Rick's hands roamed possessively over Miriam's body. "His clients already prefer working with me. They find him too intense." The video continued, each moment a fresh betrayal. Chauncey's expression hardened, but he forced himself to watch every second. These weren't just lovers plotting an affair, this was a coordinated attack on everything he'd built. His phone buzzed again. A message from Tony. "Dad, check your email." "My laptop caught more stuff." Chauncey opened his email to find multiple video files from his 11-year-old son's gaming setup. The boy's explanation was succinct. "Needed better Wi-Fi for streaming. Laptop has good view of the living room." The new footage revealed deeper layers of treachery. Miriam and Rick, sharing wine and schemes. "The firm's vulnerability is in the international contracts." Rick gestured with his glass. "If we time it right, we can force a sale before Chauncey realizes what's happening." Miriam nodded, her expression calculating. "My lawyer says his work schedule is enough for limited custody. No judge wants children raised by nannies while Daddy works 60-hour weeks." "And the accounts?" "Almost ready. Once everything's transferred, we'll have our fresh start." Miriam's laugh was cold. "He's so busy double-checking building measurements, he never notices the banking alerts." Another message from Carrie appeared. "Daddy, look what I found on Mom's phone." Screenshots filled his screen. Months of manipulated communications. School events with changed dates. Deleted messages about Tony's baseball games. Parent-teacher conferences mysteriously vanishing from shared calendars. Every missed moment. Every time Miriam had said, "Don't worry, I'll handle it," all orchestrated to paint him as the absent father they needed for their plan. The doorbell's chime cut through his dark thoughts. Through his office window, he recognized Elsa Barnes's Mercedes in the circular driveway. Rick's wife and one of the state's most formidable family law attorneys. Chauncey met her at the door, his expression guarded. Elsa's normally perfectly styled blonde hair was slightly disheveled, her designer suit showing signs of a hastily called meeting. "The children contacted me first," she said without preamble, striding past him with an armful of documents. "Your daughter is remarkably resourceful. She found my number in your emergency contacts list. How long have you known?" Chauncey led her to his office. "About the affair?" 3 weeks. Elsa spread papers across his desk with practiced efficiency. "About their plans to destroy you? That's what brought me here tonight. Your children's evidence was the final piece I needed." Chauncey studied the documents before him. Bank statements, business contracts, legal filings waiting for signatures that looked suspiciously like his own. "They've been methodical," Elsa continued, her professional demeanor cracking slightly. "Rick's been laying groundwork at the firm for months. Miriam's been systematically alienating you from the children while documenting everything that could paint you as an uninvolved father, and you've been building a case." "Of course." A cold smile crossed Elsa's face. "Did you think I spent 20 years becoming one of the top family law attorneys in California just to roll over when my husband decided to trade up for a younger model? No offense to your wife." "None taken." Chauncey's voice was ice. "What's our next move?" "First, we protect your assets. I've already prepared the necessary paperwork." She pulled out another folder. "Then we secure your custody position. The children's documentation of Miriam's manipulation is Golden Judge's hate parental alienation. The firm?" "Rick's been sloppy. Too confident in his charm. Not enough attention to detail." Elsa's smile turned predatory. "He forgot I review all his major contracts. The evidence of misconduct is substantial." Chauncey studied the woman before him, designer suit slightly wrinkled, steel in her spine, righteous anger barely contained behind professional poise. "Why help me? Why not just destroy Rick on your own?" "Because our spouses didn't just betray us, they tried to destroy us." Elsa met his gaze. "They plotted to take your children, my career's reputation, both our financial futures. That deserves a special kind of response. The kind that leaves no room for recovery?" "Precisely." Elsa began organizing the documents into action items. "The children are a priority. Everything else is collateral damage." Chauncey's phone buzzed again. Another message from Carrie. "Mom and Uncle Rick went out for dinner. Left us with pizza and Netflix. Tony's documenting everything. My children are remarkably efficient conspirators," he mused. "They're survivors," Elsa corrected. "They've watched their mother systematically try to destroy their father while pretending everything's normal. That kind of gaslighting forces kids to grow up fast." Chauncey picked up one of the financial documents. "How much time do we have?" "Based on the evidence, they're planning to move within the month. Rick's been liquidating assets. Miriam's been researching schools in other districts." Elsa's efficiency was coldly impressive. "We need to be ready before they realize the children have chosen sides." The phone buzzed one final time. A video message from Tony. "Dad, you should see this. Mom forgot she gave me her tablet password." The recording showed Miriam and Rick in the vacation house kitchen, planning their future. Once the divorce starts, Chauncey will be too focused on the firm to fight for custody. Miriam's voice was smugly confident. "He'll probably thank me for taking the kids off his hands." "And Elsa?" Rick lounged against the counter. "Any chance she'll cause problems?" "Please. Once we're done, she'll be lucky to keep her law license, let alone contest anything." Miriam's laugh was cruel. "No one will believe Little Miss Perfect once those documents surface." "What documents?" Rick's tone was sharper. "Let's just say I've made some investments in creative record-keeping." Miriam sipped her wine. "Trust me, by the time we're done, they'll both wish they'd never met us." The video ended. Chauncey looked at Elsa, saw his own cold fury reflected in her eyes. "Still want to show mercy?" she asked quietly.
"No."
Chauncey's voice was deadly calm. "Now we make them wish they'd never betrayed us." "Good." Elsa began laying out their battle plan. "Because I've spent the last 3 weeks preparing for war." As night fell over the city, 2 betrayed spouses plotted justice in Chauncey's office, while 2 children in a Lake Tahoe vacation house gathered evidence against the parents who had underestimated them all. The foundation of Chauncey's life had cracked, but he was an architect. He knew that sometimes the strongest structures rose from complete demolition, and this time, he would build something absolutely unshakable. With steel in his spine and ice in his veins, Chauncey Cervantes began planning the systematic dismantling of his betrayers' lives. They had thought him too absorbed in his work to notice their schemes. Now they would learn exactly how detailed, methodical, and ruthless an architect could be when protecting what was his. And in the Lake Tahoe house, blissfully unaware of the storm about to break, Miriam and Rick returned from dinner to find their victims quietly playing video games, never suspecting that their careful plans were already crumbling, undone by the very children they had dismissed as pawns in their game. The first act was ending. The response would be devastating. The next morning's sunrise painted Lake Tahoe in deceptively peaceful hues. While Miriam and Rick slept in their betrayal-tainted bed, Chauncey's home office had transformed into a war room. Screens displayed security feeds, financial records, and a cascade of damning evidence. The vacation house security system shows they're still asleep. Carrie's text appeared on Chauncey's phone. Mom took a sleeping pill last night. She always does when she drinks too much wine. Elsa's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard, her designer suit replaced by practical business wear. Your daughter could have a future in surveillance. She gets her attention to detail from me. Chauncey studied the asset protection documents before him. What's our timeline? We have a 4-hour window before they typically wake up. Elsa pulled up a calendar. The beauty of arrogant people, they're creatures of habit. Another text from Tony. Uncle Rick's phone is unlocked. He left it charging in the kitchen. Want me to forward his emails? Your son's rather skilled at intelligence gathering, Elsa remarked. He tests security systems in his gaming streams. Chauncey's smile held no warmth. Turns out those skills have real-world applications. The incoming emails revealed Rick's broader treachery. Client meetings scheduled without Chauncey's knowledge. Proposals modified after signing. Project budgets with suspicious discrepancies. Your wife isn't the only one who's been manipulating records, Elsa noted, scanning the documents. Rick's been systematically undermining your position in the firm for months. Can you prove it's deliberate? With this, Elsa held up a flash drive Carrie had copied from Miriam's laptop. I can prove conspiracy. The drive contained letters, drafted but never sent, outlining their entire plan. Detailed strategies for isolating Chauncey from his children. Scripts for turning clients against him. Lists of sympathetic judges for their eventual court battle. Bank account numbers in the Cayman Islands. They documented everything. Elsa's tone was coldly satisfied. People this convinced of their own brilliance always do. Chauncey's phone buzzed with an update from Carrie. Mom's calendar shows dinner reservations tonight at La Province. Their usual 3-hour business meeting. Perfect. Elsa began organizing documents into action folders. That gives us time to implement the first phase. While their betrayers plotted over French cuisine, Chauncey and Elsa orchestrated their response. Emergency court filings prepared. Bank accounts flagged for suspicious activity. Property titles secured. Business records protected. Dad. Tony's voice came through the speakerphone. I mapped out their whole routine like you asked. They're super predictable. Tell me. Every morning, they wait until they think we're busy with activities. Mom goes to the spa around 11. Uncle Rick makes business calls from the deck. They meet for lunch at 2, then shopping or hiking until dinner. And you've documented everything? Video, audio, timestamps. Carrie figured out how to sync it all with GPS data from their phones. Elsa raised an eyebrow. Your children are remarkably thorough. They're survivors. Chauncey's voice held pride tinged with sadness. They learned to gather evidence the moment they sensed something wrong. Smart kids. Elsa pulled up another document. Now, about the custody arrangements. The evidence of parental alienation is compelling, but we need to ensure the children's immediate safety. Already handled. Chauncey brought up a secure messaging app. My head of security has a team ready. Once we move, they'll ensure Miriam can't interfere. You trust them? Hassan Patton was my roommate at Stanford. He's handled my firm's security for a decade. Chauncey's expression hardened. And Miriam's affair killed his sister. What? His sister was my lead project manager. She discovered Rick's financial manipulations last year. Had a heart attack after a confrontation with him. The official report said stress and pre-existing conditions. And unofficially, Hassan's investigation suggested Rick threatened her. But we could never prove it. Chauncey's voice was steel. Now we don't have to. This ends everything. A new message from Carrie appeared. Mom's bragging to her friend Sandra on the phone. Says by next month, she'll be living in the Tokyo penthouse you designed for the Shimizu project. That's interesting. Elsa's smile was predatory. Considering the Shimizu contract specifically prohibits personal use of their properties, Rick knows that. He helped draft the agreement. Yes, but your wife doesn't. Elsa began typing rapidly. And her recorded conversation just gave us leverage with one of your biggest clients. Throughout the day, the children continued their surveillance. 12:15 p.m. Tony. Uncle Rick's calling lawyers in Singapore. Something about transferring assets. 1:30 p.m. Carrie. Mom's showing her friends pictures of her new life. They're drinking champagne and laughing about how you'll never see it coming. 3:45 p.m. Tony. Got footage of them planning how to break the divorce news. Mom says she'll cry and blame your workaholic tendencies. Uncle Rick's coaching her on looking vulnerable. Each message strengthened their case. Every recorded conversation, every documented meeting, every arrogant assumption that they were too clever to be caught all became weapons in Chauncey and Elsa's arsenal. Hassan arrived as sunset, painted the office windows gold. His security background showed in his precise movements and watchful eyes. The firm is secured, he reported. Keycards deactivated, passwords changed, servers locked down. Rick's access is limited to public areas only. The overseas accounts? Chauncey asked. Frozen pending investigation. My team found irregularities that required immediate action. Hassan's smile was grim. Amazing how many red flags appear when you know where to look. And the children's evacuation plan? Teams in place. Safe houses prepared. Once you give the word, we move. Hassan laid out detailed protocols. No one will interfere. Elsa reviewed the security measures. Impressive. But what about Miriam's potential reaction? My sister's death taught me to prepare for everything. Hassan's voice held controlled fury. She won't have time to react. As night fell, the pieces aligned. Chauncey's phone lit up with a final update from Carrie. They're leaving for dinner. Mom's wearing the diamonds you gave her for your anniversary. She told Uncle Rick they'll fund their fresh start. Once they've locked you out of the accounts. Chauncey studied the chessboard he kept in his office, a gift from his father. Do you know why I excel at architecture, Elsa? Tell me. Because I understand that every structure needs a strong foundation. He moved a piece. And that removing the right support at the right time brings down even the most ambitious plans. Check the security cameras. Tony's message interrupted. You'll want to see this. The vacation house feed showed Miriam adjusting her dress in the mirror. Rick's hands possessive on her waist. Poor Chauncey, she laughed, admiring the diamonds. Always so focused on building things. He never noticed his life falling apart. He'll learn soon enough. Rick's smile was smug. By the time we're done, he'll have nothing left to build with. And Elsa? Miriam's voice dripped contempt. The perfect wife with her perfect career? Won't be so perfect once those documents surface. Rick kissed her neck. Ready to destroy some lives, beautiful? Born ready. They left for dinner, laughing about their cleverness, never noticing Tony's gaming laptop recording every word, or Carrie's phone transmitting their arrogance to the people they planned to destroy. In Chauncey's office, 3 people watched the feed with cold satisfaction. Shall we begin? Elsa asked quietly. Chauncey looked at the chessboard, then at his phone displaying his children's messages. Every betrayal, every manipulation, every mocking laugh all led to this moment. Yes, he said simply. Let's show them how much attention I've really been paying. Hassan began implementing security protocols. Elsa initiated legal proceedings. And Chauncey, the architect they had dismissed as too absorbed in his work to notice their scheming, began the systematic deconstruction of their carefully planned future. In the Lake Tahoe house, 2 children who had learned too early about adult betrayal continued gathering evidence. their loyalty to truth and justice surpassing any misguided loyalty to a mother who had underestimated them so badly. The response was in motion. By the time Miriam and Rick finished their celebratory dinner, their world would be crumbling, destroyed by the very people they had planned to destroy. And in the end, they would learn that some betrayals demand more than mere revenge. They demand complete architectural demolition, followed by reconstruction stronger than before. The second act was ending. The aftermath would be justice served cold, calculated, and absolute. Monday dawned over Lake Tahoe with deceptive serenity. Miriam's key card clicked against the front door lock with the confidence of someone who believed they owned the world. The red error light blinked back at her. What the hell? She tried again. Nothing. Her phone wouldn't connect to the house's smart system. Even her emergency key, the one she'd smugly hidden from Chauncey, refused to turn in the lock. Fine. She dug out her phone to call the security company. We'll do this the hard way. The call went straight to a recorded message. All security inquiries for this property must be directed to Hassan Patton Security Services. Inside the house, the smart home system activated. Every screen from the kitchen tablet to the living room's massive display lit up with the same video. Carrie and Tony sat side by side, their expressions unnervingly calm. Hi, Mom. Carrie's voice filled the house. By now you've figured out something's wrong. We wanted to tell you ourselves, Tony continued. We chose Dad. Don't look for us. Carrie's smile was cold. Your boyfriend's wife has a surprise for you. Good luck with that. The video looped. Every screen, every speaker, playing their children's judgment on endless repeat. Miriam's frantically dialed Rick's number. Get over here now. Something's wrong. The house is locked. The kids are gone. I'm already on my way. Rick's voice was tense. The firm's security system locked me out. None of my passwords work. What? How? I don't know. Just wait for me. 20 minutes later, Rick's Mercedes screeched into the driveway. He found Miriam pacing on the front steps, her designer outfit from last night's dinner crumpled and stained with frustrated tears. It's not just the house, she burst out. My bank cards are declined. My phone's locked out of everything except basic calls. Even my Instagram is deactivated. Calm down. Rick reached for her, then froze as another car approached. A sleek black SUV pulled up. Hassan Patton emerged, his security team flanking him with professional precision. In his hands, 2 thick envelopes. Mrs. Cervantes. Mr. Barnes. Hassan's voice carried the cold satisfaction of long-awaited justice. I have deliveries requiring your signatures. Hassan. Miriam stepped forward. Thank God. We need access. That won't be possible. He held out the envelopes. These first. Rick grabbed his envelope, tore it open. His face went ash-gray. Divorce papers. Business dissolution notices. Court orders freezing his access to company assets. And a personal note from Elsa. Surprised? Darling? You shouldn't be. Next time you plot to destroy someone, make sure their children haven't already chosen sides. Oh, and those offshore accounts you thought were so clever? Frozen, along with everything else. Enjoy explaining that to your mistress. Miriam's envelope contained her own set of revelations. Divorce filing citing adultery and parental alienation. Emergency custody order granting Chauncey full custody. Financial freezes on every account she thought hidden. Documentation of her systematic manipulation of family schedules. Proof of her conspiracy to destroy Chauncey's reputation. This is ridiculous, she sputtered. No judge would. Every judge would. Elsa's voice cut through the morning air as she emerged from a second SUV. And every judge will. She approached with predatory grace, tablet in hand. Would you like to see what else we have? The video evidence? The recorded conversations? Your detailed plans to commit fraud? You can't prove. Actually, we can. Elsa's smile was razor-sharp. Your children are remarkably good at gathering evidence. Must be all those tech skills you dismissed as wasteful gaming. Rick stepped forward. Now wait a minute. No, you wait. Hassan's security team moved subtly, blocking any retreat. My sister waited when you threatened her over those financial discrepancies. She waited until her heart gave out from the stress of your threats. Rick's face went even paler. Oh yes, Hassan continued. We found her recordings. All of them. The DA is very interested in reopening that investigation. Over the next weeks, revelations cascaded through their carefully constructed world. The preliminary hearing was brutally efficient. Elsa presented documented evidence of systematic parental alienation. Carrie's video footage showed Miriam coaching Rick on how to manipulate client contracts. Tony's recordings revealed their plans to drain company accounts. Hassan's investigation exposed the full scope of Rick's financial misconduct. Their professional circles imploded. Clients withdrew from Rick's projects en masse. Miriam's social media influencer contracts canceled over moral character clauses. Country club memberships revoked. Charity board positions eliminated. The children's testimony proved devastating. Carrie detailed years of systematic schedule manipulation. Tony presented his meticulously logged evidence. Both children chose to live with their father, their testimony leaving no room for custody challenges. Throughout it all, Chauncey remained focused on his children and his firm. He attended every baseball game, every school event now accurately recorded in shared calendars. The Cultural Center project proceeded smoothly, its success undimmed by the scandal. 1 year later, the high school auditorium buzzed with anticipation. Carrie stood at the podium, her valedictorian medals catching the light. "People talk about truth as if it's fragile," she began, "as if it's something that can be hidden or twisted or buried. But I learned something important last year. Truth has a way of building its own foundation." In the audience, Chauncey sat with Tony and Elsa, their hands clasped. His architectural firm had doubled its projects under his sole leadership. Tony's gaming channel, focusing on strategy games and digital security, had hit 1 million subscribers. Near the back, clutching a guest pass, Miriam watched her daughter shine. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by off-the-rack business wear suitable for her new job as a junior real estate agent in Nevada. Rick was conspicuously absent. His legal troubles over his sister's death had made attendance impossible. "Some people think foundations are just about support," Carrie continued, meeting her father's eyes. "But any good architect will tell you they're about integrity, about building something that can withstand any storm." The audience applauded, but Carrie wasn't finished. "My father taught me that sometimes the strongest structures rise from complete demolition. My brother showed me that the best strategies come from patient observation. And together, we learned that real loyalty isn't about keeping secrets, it's about standing for truth." In the parking lot after the ceremony, Miriam watched Chauncey help Carrie arrange her graduation robes for photos. Elsa adjusted Tony's tie while he showed her his latest game design on his tablet. They looked complete. A security guard appeared at Miriam's elbow. "Your guest pass has expired, ma'am." She turned to leave, then paused as Carrie's voice carried across the lot. "Dad, is Mom still there?" "Yes," Chauncey answered simply. "Good." Carrie's voice was clear. "I want her to see what she lost. Every achievement, every celebration, every moment of joy. I want her to know exactly what choosing lies cost her." Miriam walked to her modest used car, her expensive heels the last remnant of her previous life clicking on the pavement. Behind her, she heard Tony call out, "Hey Dad, should we celebrate at the lake house?" "Perfect," Chauncey replied. Elsa made reservations at La Provence, the same restaurant where Miriam and Rick had plotted their future, now serving a very different kind of justice. That evening, Chauncey stood in his home office, addressing his advanced architectural students via video conference. "Remember," he told them, "sometimes the strongest foundations are built after the original structure falls. But more importantly, remember that what you build must reflect what you value. Integrity isn't just about materials, it's about every choice you make." He ended the call and turned to find Elsa in the doorway. "The children are asking for you," she said. "Tony wants to show you his new security system design." Chauncey smiled, taking her hand. They walked together to the family room where their rebuilt life stood on foundations of truth, justice, and unshakable loyalty. And somewhere in Nevada, in a small apartment, Miriam opened her mail to find an invitation to Tony's middle school graduation. On the back, in his precise handwriting, "You can sit in the back. Watch what your choices cost you." Again, the price of betrayal, it seemed, would be paid in endless installments of regret. Epilogue. 5 years later, the Manhattan skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Cervantes and Associates' new headquarters. Chauncey stood at his drafting table, reviewing plans for the Singapore Sustainability Complex, their firm's most ambitious project yet. A wall of awards testified to their meteoric rise since the reorganization 5 years ago. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Cervantes, your daughter's documentary team is here for the interview." At 18, Carrie had leveraged her early experience with digital surveillance into an award-winning documentary series, Foundations of Truth, Stories of Betrayal and Justice. Her first film, chronicling her own family's story, had earned critical acclaim and sparked a national conversation about parental alienation. "Send them up." Chauncey adjusted his tie Italian silk, a gift from Elsa on their second wedding anniversary. The office door opened to reveal a confident young woman leading a professional film crew. Carrie's resemblance to her mother had faded, replaced by a poise that was entirely her own. "Ready to talk about the renovation project, Dad?" She directed her crew to set up. The series on rebuilding after betrayal needs its architectural perspective. Always. Chauncey smiled at his daughter's metaphorical approach. "Though I suspect this interview isn't just about buildings." "It never is." Carrie checked her notes. "Did you see Mom's latest appeal was denied?" Hassan mentioned it. Chauncey's expression remained neutral. "Something about insufficient grounds for reconsidering the financial settlements?" "Third attempt this year." Carrie's laugh held no sympathy. She should have read the prenup you and Elsa drafted more carefully before trying to contest it. The years had not been kind to Miriam Cervantes, now Miriam Wilson, after a brief, disastrous marriage to a minor real estate developer. Her Nevada real estate career had faltered under the weight of her documented history of fraud. Each attempt to rebuild her reputation was met with Tony's viral videos analyzing patterns of deception, or Carrie's documentary clips showing her orchestrated betrayal. "How's her new job?" Chauncey asked, though he already knew from Hassan's regular reports. "Still giving tours at the Reno Convention Center." Carrie adjusted her camera. "Apparently, she tells anyone who'll listen that she used to be married to that famous architect, at least until security reminds her about the non-disclosure agreement. The NDA had been Elsa's masterstroke protection for the children in exchange for a modest monthly stipend. Every time Miriam violated it, the payment decreased. And Uncle Rick? Carrie's tone dripped irony on the title. Still serving his sentence for financial fraud and criminal harassment. Chauncey moved to his desk. "Though I hear he's up for parole next year." Rick Barnes had learned too late that threatening the wrong person's sister had consequences. Hassan's evidence about his role in her death had opened floodgates of financial misconduct investigations. His attempts to blame everything on Miriam had only accelerated his downfall. "Tony's doing a live stream about the case tonight," Carrie mentioned. His Strategies of Justice channel hit 5 million subscribers last month. At 16, Tony had transformed his gaming expertise into a thriving career analyzing real-world cases of corporate fraud and digital deception. His signature sign-off, "Remember, every betrayal leaves digital footprints," had become a catchphrase among cybersecurity professionals. The intercom buzzed again. "Mr. Cervantes, Mrs. Cervantes is here with the Tokyo contract updates." Elsa entered, her legal briefcase replaced by architectural portfolios. After their marriage, she'd returned to her first love, architectural law, and now headed the firm's international contracts division. Their partnership, personal and professional, had become legendary in industry circles. The Shimizu Group doubled their investment, she announced. "Apparently, your design for their eco tower impressed the board, the same tower Miriam thought she'd be living in." Carrie's smile was sharp. "Life has a sense of irony." Speaking of irony, Elsa set down her folders. "Rick's former clients are bidding against each other for our services. Hassan's security protocols have become the industry standard." Hassan Patton's security company now protected half the Fortune 500's architectural data. His sister's case had revolutionized digital security in corporate architecture, her legacy living on in ways Rick never imagined. "Did you tell them about the foundation?" Carrie asked, adjusting her lighting setup. Perfect timing. Chauncey pulled up a presentation. "The Cervantes Foundation for Family Justice launches next month. focusing on supporting children affected by parental alienation and corporate fraud. Mom tried to contact me about that. Carrie's expression hardened. Wanted to contribute her perspective to the launch event. Let me guess. Elsa's voice held amused contempt. Another violation of the NDA? Already documented. Tony's voice came from Carrie's laptop, his gaming stream visible. Added it to the evidence database. Her stipend drops another 10% next month. The years had taught Miriam nothing about digital footprints. Every attempt to contact her children, every social media post about her unfair treatment, every angry email to Chauncey's firm, all meticulously logged and costly. How's the new house coming along? Elsa asked Carrie, changing the subject. Dad's design is perfect. Carrie beamed. The recording studio has amazing acoustics for documentary voiceovers. And the security system Tony designed. Mom won't be making any surprise visits. Unlike her surprise last Christmas, Tony's voice held dark amusement. Did she really think showing up drunk at the firm's holiday party would work? That incident had cost Miriam her real estate license. Her recorded rant about stolen lives and home-wrecking attorneys had gone viral thanks to Tony's security cameras and Carrie's editing skills. Her therapist suggested closure, Elsa remarked dryly. Apparently, she's still convinced she's the victim. Speaking of closure, Carrie turned to her father. Ready for your interview? The world wants to know how you rebuilt after betrayal. Chauncey looked around his office at his daughter's confident professionalism, his wife's loving strength, his son's digital presence, the empire they'd built from the ashes of betrayal. The key to rebuilding, he began, as Carrie's cameras rolled, is understanding that some foundations can't be repaired. Sometimes you need a complete demolition before you can build something stronger. The interview continued, documenting their journey from betrayal to triumph. Meanwhile, in a small Reno apartment, Miriam watched Tony's live stream with bitter regret. Her phone buzzed with another NDA violation notice. Her stipend would barely cover rent next month. In a minimum security prison, Rick Barnes stared at newspaper coverage of Cervantes and Associates' latest triumph. His parole officer had warned him any contact with his former partner or family would violate his release conditions. His cellmate watched CNBC, where Tony Cervantes was explaining how to detect corporate fraud through digital analysis. The documentary aired 6 months later. Critics praised its unflinching look at betrayal's consequences. Architectural journals highlighted Chauncey's metaphorical approach to rebuilding. Legal reviews commended Elsa's innovative protections for betrayed spouses. At the premiere, Chauncey and Elsa sat proudly with their children. Tony's security team kept the event private. Carrie's cameras captured everything. And somewhere in Reno, Miriam watched through a streaming service she could barely afford. Seeing the life she'd thrown away, the children who'd outgrown her, the empire she tried to steal now standing stronger than ever. The final scene showed the Cervantes family at their Lake Tahoe house, the site of the original betrayal, now completely redesigned. Carrie's documentary studio occupied the former master suite. Tony's gaming command center filled the great room. Chauncey and Elsa's architectural designs covered the walls where evidence of betrayal once hung. The thing about betrayal, Carrie's voiceover concluded, is that it shows you who people really are. My mother and her lover showed us their truth, so we showed them ours. And we built something stronger than they could ever tear down. The credits rolled over scenes of their new life. Chauncey and Elsa reviewing plans for another groundbreaking project. Tony explaining digital security to corporate executives. Carrie accepting another documentary award. Hassan's security team protecting architectural innovations. The Cervantes Foundation helping other families rebuild. And in the final frame, a simple architectural drawing. The original house plans, marked demolition approved, followed by blueprints for something newer, stronger, better. Because sometimes, as Chauncey often told his architectural students, the price of betrayal becomes the foundation of something priceless. The true cost, as Miriam and Rick learned too late, wasn't in the money they lost or the lives they destroyed. It was in the future they'd never share, the strength they'd underestimated, and the justice that would follow them forever. Some prices, after all, never stop being paid.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy the story, Please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.
I thought my wife was cheating when I saw her with another man, but the truth left me shocked. I'm Ben, short for Benjamin Timothy Haggard. Shannon and I got married 7 years ago, but things haven't been going well lately. Despite my efforts, I can't shake the feeling of dissatisfaction with how our relationship has developed. This feeling has stuck with me for about 6 weeks, even before an unexpected photo appeared. The tension between Shannon and me has been increasing, especially in the last few days, and I suspect her sister, Nita, is somehow involved. After I received the photo, I found myself working outside the city on a more challenging project than usual. There was a critical issue with the main refrigeration unit at Purdue University, and despite our efforts, the team couldn't solve it. As an employee of the reputable Fraser HVAC company, I'm one of 2 highly qualified engineers responsible for solving such emergencies. Luckily, it was my turn to be on duty that week, so on Tuesday, I went on a 4-hour trip to West Lafayette and stayed there until Thursday. We finally solved the problem around 9 in the evening. Exhausted, I decided to have dinner at the nearest place on the university grounds, and by around 10 p.m., I went to my hotel room. I quickly sent Shannon a message saying I was going to bed and that we'd continue testing the system the next morning. I also mentioned we'd meet for dinner on Friday. After a refreshing shower, I got ready for bed with ESPN playing in the background. Unexpectedly, I received a message from Roland Bruton, my closest colleague at Fraser. The message included an apology and a photo taken that evening at Cassadell. Roland asked me to call him if I wanted to discuss this further. The attached photo showed a couple sitting at a table in a cozy restaurant, leaning against each other with intertwined hands and locked gazes. It was Shannon, my beloved wife, and standing next to her was Eric Chesterton, a colleague from the OSU library. I've never treated Eric warmly, considering him a bit strange, but the idea that he might be connected to my wife never crossed my mind. Recently, our relationship had been strained, and the thought of Shannon betraying me with another man was unimaginable. Realizing that doing nothing would only fuel my growing anger, I decided to turn off the TV and contact Roland. I conveyed my apologies for disturbing his Thursday night. Pausing to grasp the situation, I explained to Roland that it was time to discuss what he had seen. I shared that Emily and I had an early dinner, and as we finished, we noticed them on the other side of the restaurant. Emily had spotted Shannon and asked if it was her. I was intrigued, so I observed them for a while, taking pictures. Fortunately, they didn't engage in any affectionate gestures like kissing. They seemed deeply engrossed in conversation, mirroring the scene in the photograph. There was a hint of regret in Roland's voice as he exhaled loudly. He conveyed to me that he sincerely apologized. I inquired about their departure, asking if they left together and where they were headed. Reflecting on the incident, Roland continued by saying they waited in their car in the parking lot for a short while, but Shannon and the other man never appeared. Eventually, they decided to leave and sent me a photo. Roland expressed regret for leaving in a hurry without waiting for them, explaining that it seemed they had just received their drinks and hadn't started eating, suggesting a significant wait. A heavy silence followed, leaving both of us perplexed, unsure of what to say. Eventually, Roland spoke, expressing his understanding. He conveyed that he now understood the situation and went on to share, "I get it now, my friend. Emily wanted me to send you her warm regards. She's upset with Shannon, and I share her feelings. Though it hasn't fully hit me yet, I'm sure I'll be furious in a few hours." I inquired about the Purdue job, asking when I could come home. Roland provided the information, stating, "Yes, we plan to test it tomorrow morning, and after that I'll make a 4-hour trip back. It'll give me time to calm down and remind myself not to act impulsively." I responded with a smile. Deep down, Roland was aware that I wouldn't resort to violence against Shannon, and he understood that perfectly. Roland mentioned that he and his friend Emily had been discussing something, but it was probably too early to bring up. He offered, "If you ever need a place to stay overnight, we have a guest room just for you." I conveyed my gratitude, expressing, "Thank you, Roland. I really appreciate it. I don't know my next steps yet, but I'll definitely consider your offer." After a few more minutes of quiet conversation, I ended the chat. I turned off the light, lay down, and quickly fell asleep. After all, no marriage is perfect, right? Despite our flaws, I genuinely loved Shannon and did everything I could to make her happy for 7 years, including 3 years of dating. Of the 4 who married, we faced constant issues. From my observations, the main problems were money and closeness. Luckily, we didn't encounter problems in these areas. Neither of us was a wasteful spender, and our private connection remained as crucial to both of us as in the early months of our relationship. Though things became more routine, Shannon and I still desired each other equally. No, for us, the problem didn't relate to finances or closeness, but with Nita. She was 35, about 4 years older than Shannon and me. Her husband, Alex, wasn't any better. He was a vain lawyer who saw himself as superior, but at least I didn't have to endure his presence so often. Shannon always looked up to her older sister, Nita, a frequent guest in our house who constantly gave unsolicited advice on how we should live. Shannon suggested that it would make more sense to store the dishes in one place and move the spices elsewhere. She commented on whether I still used a gas grill, stating that charcoal enhances the taste of meat much better. She also expressed her opinion on the hideous green chair, describing it as screaming trailer park. In general, that conveyed her overall perspective on the matter. It deeply bothered me that Shannon couldn't resist and ask her to leave. The most unpleasant part, sparing you the detailed list of Nita's other offenses, was that she consistently belittled me behind my back. If I was in the room, she'd be overly kind, endlessly praising me for being nice to Shannon, for being caring, for being so helpful around the house, while poor Alex, according to her, couldn't even change a light bulb. Overhearing her speak negatively about me more than once when she thought I wasn't around was infuriating. One day, while Shannon and she were having coffee in the kitchen, I quietly entered through the back door after a jog. She conveyed to Shannon that she adored her, but had to admit that I, Ben, could be a bit uncultured. She expressed that I didn't have the same charm as Christopher or even Tom, and despite my higher education, she questioned why I worked with my hands. In her opinion, Shannon could have chosen someone much better. I couldn't understand her thinking, especially considering we had been married for almost 2 years by then. It was frustrating to hear Nita reminiscing about Shannon's past boyfriends. She later asked if I was seriously thinking about having children with him, sounding upset. Just 5 minutes later, she appeared in front of me with a smile and mentioned that Shannon and she were just talking about what a wonderful husband she has. I couldn't believe it. Shannon and I had argued about this many times, and though she had calmed me down, she never took any action to solve the problem. She mentioned that Nita wasn't that bad and actually liked me, but I waved her words away. I expressed my emotions, exclaiming how I couldn't stand it when Nita said we were definitely not going to have children. Overwhelmed with emotions, I paced back and forth in the bedroom, consumed by anger. Disappointment overwhelmed me, and I feared I was on the verge of losing my mind. My wife tried to calm me down, explaining she was venting her discontent and loved me despite her tendency to incite quarrels. But this quarrel was one of the worst in our lives. I couldn't contain my emotions and ended up saying a few rude words, after which I ran out of the house. I was gone for 6 long hours, seeking solace with my friend Raphael, the bartender at Bob's restaurant. Mostly, I just sat there, trying to clear my head. When I got home at midnight, I found her sleeping in our bed, turning away from me. The atmosphere was tense, and our conversation was limited to a simple exchange of good morning wishes and a request for more coffee. Within a few days, the situation began to improve and become warmer, but it was never fully resolved. It was clear Shannon loved me, but I couldn't understand why she wouldn't take my side and ask her sister to stop humiliating me. The only way out for me was to avoid Nita as much as possible, making excuses so I wouldn't be home when she came. Besides, I tried to minimize conversations about her with Shannon. The weeks leading up to my trip to West Lafayette were particularly stressful. Oddly enough, Nita was present in the house more often than ever before. Almost every day, when I came home from work, she and Shannon had important conversations in the kitchen. Perhaps for this or another reason, Shannon began treating me colder and more distant. She realized it wasn't worth mentioning her sister in my presence, leaving me in the dark about what was going on with Nita. But apparently, Shannon still distanced herself from me. Although our communication remained polite, who needs simple politeness with his wife, she became cautious around me, and our closeness decreased noticeably. Recently, Shannon and I have been distant from each other for several weeks, exchanging only the usual hugs. Due to the strange atmosphere, it was challenging for me to approach her, and I was on the verge of giving up. Our private relationships also became routine, with only a few occurrences in the past month. Though not great at deep conversations, I did try once or twice. I asked Shannon if something was bothering her, if we needed to have a serious conversation. I wanted to solve our problems, but she said it was okay. She mentioned concerns about changes at work and minor issues with Nita, but nothing requiring special attention. I appreciate your concern, dear, a forced grin and a peck on the cheek. That's all I got in response. This behavior continued for quite a long time, and I decided to have a long conversation with Aunt Gwen. Aunt Gwen, my mother's younger sister, played a significant role in my upbringing after my father's passing and my mother's subsequent illness. Although she now lives in Seattle, we often talked on the phone. If anyone could help me understand Shannon's behavior, it was undoubtedly Gwen. When I returned from Purdue, I decided to call her over the weekend. After Roland sent the photo, I made a deliberate effort to set aside the confusion and focus on my work. On Friday morning, my main goal was to test the system's capabilities, ensure it handled the load, and quickly move on. By about 1 p.m, we had successfully completed all necessary checks. As a thank you gesture, the Purdue team invited me to a quick lunch, and then I headed home. During the 200-mile journey, my mind was filled with numerous puzzling questions. Had they already been private, or was it just a possibility? Did my actions contribute to this situation? I also wondered if Shannon's feelings for him were genuine or just a passing fling. Could I find the strength to forgive what happened? Or was our relationship beyond repair, and did Nita play a role in this? Did she encourage her sister's actions? Maybe. Approaching Columbus in chaotic Friday traffic, I didn't have a clear answer, but I knew I wasn't ready to face her at home. After considering Roland's generous offer of his guest room, I ultimately chose a modest room at Motel 6, had a hearty steak and beer at Outback, and spent another night alone. With a sense of satisfaction, I sent Shannon the least affectionate message possible. I'm almost done, and I have to go home tomorrow. No sweet words or emojis, just the essential information for her to know I was alive. She replied, "Okay, honey, I miss you." Yes, that's correct. Around 9:30, I drove back to our street, slowly past our house, checking for unfamiliar cars nearby. Nothing seemed unusual. The house was dark except for our bedroom, where the curtains suggested the TV was on. Disappointed, I returned to Motel 6 and went to bed. When I returned to the house shortly before noon, there was no rush. I felt a wave of emptiness and indifference. If earlier I was consumed by anger and vindictive thoughts, now I longed for resolution. I needed to find out the truth, assess the consequences of this ordeal, and confront them face to face. Shannon's absence and the eerie silence in the house only intensified my emotions. Entering the house through a side door, I went upstairs to freshen up and organize my things. Then I went down to the kitchen to make a sandwich. My gaze involuntarily shifted to the front door. I stood paralyzed. A large suitcase stood untouched at the entrance. Approaching it, I felt its weight, indicating it was full. Time seemed to slip away, and I couldn't figure out how long I'd been fixated on it. The silence was broken by the sound of a side door opening. Shannon came in, greeting me softly, "Hello, baby," with an unusual half-smile. She hugged me warmly, more like a grandmother than a passionate embrace between spouses after a week apart. I couldn't take my eyes off her. I wasn't planning to raise my voice or create a scene, I just wanted to understand the situation. She led me back to the kitchen, holding my hand, and we sat at the table across from each other. Expressing concern, she mentioned that I must be tired and asked if I had eaten. She inquired if she could cook me lunch and asked what I wanted. I reassured her, saying I was fine, and focused on her face. Leaning closer, she conveyed seriously that she needed to talk to me. Expressing urgency, she apologized and watched me patiently, waiting for a response. But I remained silent. Eventually, she inquired if she could ask me something and requested that I remain calm and refrain from anger. She wanted to tell the whole story before hearing my thoughts and acknowledged that she was asking a lot. I nodded in agreement. All I wanted was for the situation to be resolved. She took a deep breath and began talking about Nita. To my surprise, anger suddenly surged within me. I expressed my frustration, asking, "What does this rude woman have to do with it?" Shannon pleaded, her face filled with panic, and she begged me to listen. I noticed that my fists were tightly clenched, and I was holding my breath. After rising from my seat, pacing around the kitchen and settling back down, I took a deep breath, attempting to compose myself. In due course, I responded, "Okay, go ahead. I promise to listen, so I will." I couldn't help but speculate on how the conversation might shift if she began discussing her sister. It hinted at the possibility of enduring a more extended discussion. After giving me a cautious glance, she began again, explaining that she had been spending a lot of time with Nita lately. She hoped I could understand how it was affecting her and creating tension. She mentioned that things had taken a turn for the worse between Alex and Nita, and she suspected him of betrayal. About a month ago, Nita found him with one of his assistants on the office table, and Shannon witnessed the unfolding scene. Feeling a strong sense of sympathy for Nita, it goes without saying that it was an incredibly tough time for her. Nita experienced deep heartache and anger, unsure how to handle the situation. Alex constantly apologized, expressed a desire to reconcile, and promised to do everything possible, including seeking counseling, to improve their relationship. But everything changed on Tuesday. Feeling depressed, Nita decided to take a break to calm down and then requested Alex to leave, expressing her desire for a divorce. Unfortunately, he resorted to physical force. Leading to her hospitalization on Tuesday evening, she endured a concussion. In that moment, my own marital struggles briefly faded from my mind. I conveyed sympathy, stating, "I'm sorry, Shannon, or I wouldn't wish that on anyone." She lowered herself, took my hand, and conveyed gratitude, remarking, "Thank you, dear. I understand that you don't like her, and that means a lot to me." "Now comes the toughest part." She paused and explained that Nita would be discharged from the hospital on Monday but had nowhere to go. Alex is acting extremely difficult and refuses to leave the house. She wanted to offer her our guest room where she could stay. Most likely, she'd have to take sick leave and work part-time for a couple of weeks. She wanted to be close to her and take care of her. She hurriedly explained, "I know you don't like her and you don't want to be around her, but she has no one else to turn to. Please, Ben." Her life is falling apart and I am her only sister. Ben, you're right, she's not the kind of person I particularly enjoy being around, but it doesn't matter now. Of course, she can stay with us. Did you really think I would refuse? She got up excitedly, circled the table and settled on my lap, wrapping her arms around me. When I looked into her eyes, pure joy radiated from her face. Expressing her gratitude, she whispered, "Thank you, my love." Her lips met mine in a gentle kiss, assuring me that everything would be fine. She vowed to protect me and ensure we saw each other less often. With utmost sincerity, she promised never to let her sister belittle me again, never again. The happiness emanating from her overwhelmed me, and I couldn't resist hugging her tighter. As I put my head on her shoulder, tears welled up for a moment, and I composed myself carefully. I moved her from my lap to a nearby chair. I went to the sink, poured a glass of water, and unable to endure the anticipation any longer, said, "Okay, Shannon, can we just finish this? Let's get this over with, whatever it is." She looked at me with confusion, and I couldn't help but express my disappointment. "Honestly, you can't even be honest with me. Dear, I sincerely don't understand what you're talking about. What is the rest?" she asked. Disappointed, I picked up my phone, scrolled through the messages until I found the photo Roland had sent me, and shoved it in her face. "This, Shannon. You and this man," I said to her face. The revelation left her speechless. I was momentarily puzzled by the sight of her suitcase at the front door. How could she leave when she was helping her sister move in with us? Before I could finish, she said, "Oh, Ben, this is incredibly sad. Carrie, his wife, has a recurrence of breast cancer, and their 2-year-old twins are in the center of it all. He is absolutely terrified, and my heart is bursting with grief." I stared at her, suddenly grasping the importance of the photo where she was with a man. Yes, we had dinner. He really needed someone to talk to. Her prognosis is uncertain right now. She held my gaze for a moment, conveying a deeper meaning. "Did you genuinely believe it? Oh my God, did you think it was a romantic dinner? That's how it appears, right?" I couldn't even control the tone of my voice. "Roland and Emily Bruton certainly thought so. They are ready to meet you face to face." Before I could say anything or take any action, she hugged me tightly. "Benjamin Timothy Haggard, you are the only man I have loved or even considered in the last 7 years. Eric is just a friend whose wife is suffering from a terminal illness." I offered him emotional support when he needed it. It became harder and harder for me to breathe, not just because she refused to let me go. Additionally, I couldn't help but notice tension in our environment over the past few weeks. We lacked communication, physical closeness was scarce. I was consumed with worry about Nita, my love, and I couldn't trust you with this. The mere mention of her name disgusted you, so I carried this burden alone, which led to distance. I apologize for being so distant. My thoughts were exclusively focused on Nita and the vile actions committed against her. "Okay, I guess I can understand that," I said, but the suitcase caught my attention. It was standing fully packed at the front door. As I looked at it, she gently pulled my head down and kissed me on the lips with a long, sincere kiss, then met my tear-stained eyes. It was obvious that something had happened. I decided to go to Nita and Alex's house and gathered clothes so that she would have everything she needed for the coming weeks. "Baby, I'm very sorry about the misunderstanding that happened," she apologized, with regret in her voice. "I'm very sorry about this misunderstanding," I said regretfully. "You've had this photo since Thursday, and I can imagine how you suffered, my love. I'm very sorry." Without letting go of my hand, she gently pulled me towards the stairs. Her urgency left no room for delay. We had to solve something extremely important urgently. In the private atmosphere of the bedroom, we gently took off our clothes, hugged, exchanged tender kisses, and shed tears of love. We hugged each other tightly, fervently, and passionately, making tender love, completely immersed in the presence of my soulmate. While lying in bed, our hands explored each other's bodies as we engaged in intermittent conversations. I asked, "Really?" and she responded, "Yes, really, really." Her voice was filled with affectionate tenderness and playful teasing. She continued, "I really saw his wife. And did you really think that I was cheating on you?" Our friends Roland and Emily had the same thought. Although I despise the fact that his wife has cancer, it made me think about the state of my own marriage. I confessed, I thought it was over. She expressed her concern, saying, "I believe that one cheater in the family is more than enough. Poor Nita." As an epilogue to our conversation, it dawned on me. I'll be damned if it hasn't stopped completely, Nita. I must say she looked completely different, which is not so surprising considering what she had recently been through. At the same time, she expressed great gratitude for being in our house and constantly praised Shannon for marrying me. She apologized to me countless times, admitting that she had completely misjudged me. In the end, I insisted that everything was fine and that she could stop apologizing, but she still tried to help, even taking on some of the responsibilities of cooking and housework when she began to feel better. After she managed to find a fierce and determined lawyer, she finally got the opportunity to gain some financial stability and secure a nice apartment for herself during the chaotic divorce process. Despite the circumstances, she and Shannon continued to spend time together, but it was very nice to have the house at our disposal again. It was a calm and restorative period, almost reminiscent of a second honeymoon. We both acutely realized the value of our relationship and the depth of our affection. Watching a marriage break up and turn into a destructive mess served as a visual reminder to us that we need to cherish and appreciate our own marriage. There are noticeably more smiles at home. Only 4 months later, we received the joyful news about the recovery of Eric's wife. Despite the fact that Eric continues to be eccentric, I am sincerely happy for their positive outcome. I set up cameras throughout my house and discovered the heartbreaking truth about my wife's cheating. We got married, and just 4 days later, we began a new part of our lives on the east coast of the USA. I worked as an engineer, and she got a job as a chemist. Looking back, the first 4 years of our marriage were pretty happy, if not perfect. Since we didn't have family or friends nearby, we spent most of our time together, creating some unforgettable memories. Trouble started when we decided to buy a townhouse, and I suggested starting a family, thinking it was the next step in our relationship. However, when I brought it up, things took a bad turn. We argued a lot, and my ex admitted she didn't have a problem with having kids, but she didn't want them with me. That hurt. She said having a child with me would tie her down completely, and she wasn't sure about spending her life with me. As we talked more, things got worse until my ex-wife told me she was no longer attracted to me. I asked if there was someone else, and to my dismay, she confessed to being strongly attracted to her boss. Turns out they had secretly liked each other for a while, and their relationship turned physical during work trips. When I returned from my trip, something was off with my wife. She seemed sorry and suggested we sell our house and move to a smaller town for a fresh start. I was confused since we just went through a rough patch, and now she wanted to relocate with me. It didn't make sense. Then she started talking about her mother cheating on her first husband during a trip to Mexico. She hinted at something, but I couldn't figure it out. I should have been alarmed when she admitted being attracted to her boss, especially since they traveled together for work. It was almost a confession of cheating on their recent trip, but I was young and naive, and the situation didn't register. Soon, things went out of control. She worked late, went away on weekends to the mountains, where I later found out her boss had a cabin, and even took a solo vacation to clear her mind. This was before cell phones, so I couldn't reach her. I remember losing my mind, not hearing from my wife for a week with no idea where she was. My thoughts raced, considering every scenario except the obvious one. She was with her lover on a week-long vacation. As time went on, I stayed by her side, doing my best to help. I covered the costs for her counseling, drove her to appointments, and waited in the car. I hoped therapy would make her see that she was treating me unfairly. However, during one session, the therapist suggested divorce might be the best option, and surprisingly, my wife seemed to agree. Despite this setback, I still held on to hope that we could figure things out and she'd become the loving partner she used to be. Her behavior became unpredictable, showing she was dealing with inner struggles. One moment she'd express love, and the next, she couldn't stand being near me. I noticed she constantly tried to start fights, giving various reasons for her unhappiness. She'd keep pushing until I got upset, then escalate the argument until I had to leave the house for some peace. This was her chance to call her lover, as shown by the phone records. When she asked for a divorce, it felt like my world fell apart. While our marriage had its challenges, divorce had never crossed my mind. You have to understand, I come from a deeply Catholic background, specifically Hispanic, and divorce was a taboo subject in my upbringing. During that time, I had to attend a 2-week training in another state. When I returned, she was gone, and so were half of our furniture and savings. I was left clueless about her whereabouts. With no internet or online support groups available, I had no one to turn to. Feeling alone and abandoned, I sank into a dark hole of depression. The drama and stress had taken a toll on me for the past 18 months, and I'd let myself go. I gained weight and didn't care about my physical or mental well-being. Looking back, I appeared as terrible as I felt. My ex disappeared without a trace, leaving me with no way to contact her, no return address, and no support from mutual friends she had deceived. In a matter of days, I was completely isolated. Somehow, I forced myself out of bed each morning and went to work, earning just enough to stay afloat. One morning, almost a year after my ex left me alone and broke, I woke up to see shadows moving slowly on the empty walls of my home. It felt like a scene from a horror movie, but the real horror was my life. I realized that if I didn't pull myself out of this despair soon, I would become nothing more than a shadow in the wall of an empty room. Back then, I felt like I was in a living nightmare. To give you an idea, 5 years before my ex left me, I had to undergo open heart surgery. Surgeons cut my chest open, spread my ribs, and wired my chest back together with 11 titanium wires. It took me 18 months to recover from that ordeal, but I would have rather gone through it all again than relive the experience of being betrayed and abandoned by my spouse. It was a really tough time, but somehow I found the strength to pull myself out of that deep well of despair and start rebuilding my life. I was determined to completely change who I was from the inside out. Despite facing many challenges, I still had a good job and a roof over my head, so I began focusing on my health and well-being. I started exercising regularly and lost an impressive 50 pounds. I got rid of my old clothes and got some stylish new ones. I even switched from glasses to contact lenses. On top of all that, I started running and trained for a marathon. But that's not all. I also got into rock climbing and joined a volleyball team. Gradually, I began living a life I could be proud of. Even though I may not be the most handsome guy, I started radiating an aura of confidence that people noticed. Women found me attractive, and soon enough, I was back in the dating scene. Looking back, I realized that my wife's betrayal turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. It allowed me to discover my true self and become the man I was meant to be. After a couple of years living my new life, I found myself looking for a new companion. Fate had it that I found her in a friend from work, someone who had seen my decline and subsequent rise from the ashes. To say she was stunning would be an understatement. Even the guards in my building, who I had become good friends with, couldn't believe I was dating the babe of the building. After falling in love and getting married, my wife decided to quit her job and focus on raising our 4 children. With only one income on the expensive East Coast of the USA, luxury was out of the question. But my wife proved to be an excellent home manager and an even better mother. She was a force to be reckoned with, running triathlons and learning auto maintenance, woodworking, and carpentry while managing our family of 6. There was no household project she wouldn't tackle. Currently, we're building a camper van to explore the USA when I retire in December. And to top it all off, we're eagerly awaiting the arrival of our first grandchild this winter. My wife taught me the real meaning of a strong, independent woman, and my life has been better for it. We never know what the future will bring, so we just have to stay positive and trust that good people are out there looking for us too. Betrayal doesn't have to define us, especially if there's no chance for reconciliation. Even if a relationship doesn't work out, it doesn't mean the end of the road. You might be curious about what happened to the ex. Well, a few years after she left, I heard through the grapevine that her boss divorced his wife, and soon after, they became a couple and eventually got married. Funny how things work out, isn't it? Fast forward to around 15 years ago, out of nowhere, she managed to track down my number and give me a call. She wanted to let me know that a mutual friend had passed away. We chatted for a bit, and I couldn't help but ask how she was doing. Her response was a bit cryptic, something like, living with the consequences of her past mistakes. I replied with a nonchalant, "It's all water under the bridge," and promptly hung up. To be honest, I'm grateful to my ex-wife for bringing me and my current wife together. It's strange how life works sometimes, isn't it? One decision can change everything. And here's another thing. My unsuccessful marriage steered me toward a new path in life. Over the past 15 years, I've been leading a ministry at my parish, assisting those going through divorces and separations. As a Catholic permanent deacon, I've worked with numerous individuals, guiding them to find peace and hope for the future. You could say that my ex-wife's unwillingness to reconcile with me has directed me toward a more significant purpose. Now, let's address a few questions you might have while hearing my story. Did she ever apologize? No, she never said sorry. She didn't even bid farewell. It was as if the years we spent together, from being best friends in college to dating and getting married, meant nothing to her. Did you ever talk to her? We owned a townhouse, and since she contributed to the mortgage, we had to communicate. She developed an odd system of phone calls through friends for me to reach her, and then she would call me back only if she thought communication was necessary. We only spoke a few times. Have you ever laid eyes on her again? I saw her 3 times after she left me, the last time being the day our divorce was finalized. A couple of years after her betrayal, she looked disheveled, dressed like a hippie, without makeup. Meanwhile, I had lost 50 lbs and was hitting the gym hard. Due to my weight loss, all my clothes were tailored, making me look sharp in my suit and tie. The last glance she gave me when the judge asked if I had any objections to the divorce agreement is forever etched in my mind. It was pure hatred. Her narcissistic mind couldn't handle the fact that I had thrived without her negative influence in my life. Second story recently, I've been suspecting my wife's faithfulness. But it's tricky. Without solid proof to support my gut feeling, I'm hesitant to confront her or bring up the topic, fearing unnecessary drama or giving her a chance to cover her tracks if she's guilty. It's a tough decision, and I'm uncertain about my next move. In recent months, something seems off with my wife. Small things don't add up. About 4 months ago, she started hitting the gym and paying more attention to her appearance. She's always been beautiful, but she never cared much for makeup or hairstyling. Now, she's always dressed up. Another concern is how protective she is of her phone. While it's normal for us to go through each other's phones, hers is always with her. If I need to use it for something innocent, like taking a picture, she tells me to use my own phone. Additionally, she's been working late and traveling more for her job. Something just doesn't feel right. Over the past 4 months, my wife hasn't shown interest in being close with me. Quick, meaningless kisses are all I get. I've tried initiating physical contact, but she's turned me down, and when she does give in, she just lies there unresponsive. It leaves me feeling worse than a direct rejection. When I brought up the lack of closeness before, she blamed it on tiredness from being a mom, work, and lifting weights. She promised to try harder and even kissed me later that night, but nothing has changed since then. I've been trying to figure out what's going on with my wife lately. Could it be a midlife crisis or maybe something else? It's hard to pinpoint, but there's a guy at her workplace that caught my attention. She used to talk about him all the time, but suddenly stopped a few months back. Despite this, I know they still work closely together. Apparently, he's married with kids and has been confiding in my wife about his own marital issues. I've briefly met him a few times, but he didn't seem interested in getting to know me. It's got me thinking that he could be trouble. I hate to admit it, but I've been comparing myself to this guy at my wife's work. He's not as good looking as me and definitely not in the same physical shape. Not to brag, but it's true. I'm big and strong, while he's average and a little overweight. But he dresses sharply, is outgoing, and enjoys a drink, something my wife has mentioned a few times that she wishes I would do more often. He has a master's degree, while I only graduated from high school. And to top it off, he makes more money than I do. As a trainer for fighters, I earn a modest income, but my passion for the job is invaluable. On the flip side, there's this guy who's wealthy and enjoys flaunting his riches. I don't usually compare myself to others, but in this situation, the contrasts between us are glaring. What's been bothering me is my wife's recent business trip to a tropical resort. Initially, I thought many CO workers would be there, but it turns out it was just her, the flashy guy, and the CEO. The CEO isn't a concern due to age, but the other guy is a different story. My gut tells me something happened between them during that week, and not knowing for sure is driving me crazy. My inner detective senses something is off in my marriage, but I'm cautious not to jump to conclusions and worsen things by confronting her. While our marriage has had its challenges, overall it's been decent. Nothing major has occurred to make me question her loyalty. However, my wife and I have different personalities. I'm not the most social person, and I don't make a lot of money, which frustrates her. She believes I should be pursuing a more lucrative career, but my passion lies in fighting and training fighters, something I've known my whole life. I could consider becoming a personal trainer, but these paths don't lead to significant earnings. Apart from this, she seems content in our marriage. However, I can't shake the feeling that something is off, especially in her behavior towards me and this flashy guy at work. A friend suggested I play the spy and gather evidence to confirm my suspicions, but I'm uncomfortable violating my wife's privacy. If she is cheating, forgiveness might be challenging, but I hope my hunch is wrong. Lately, thoughts of infidelity have been creeping into my mind, and I can't shake them. The scariest part is we have 2 kids, and the idea of losing them terrifies me. I'm heavily invested in their lives, and the thought of only seeing them half the time breaks my heart. Any suggestions on how to approach this situation would be appreciated. Update: I got the login details for our cell phone account. My wife uses her phone a lot for work, and initially everything seemed normal when I checked it. However, as I sorted through the numbers and times, I noticed a large number of texts sent to a single number, often late at night, a few hours after we went to bed. I'm determined to find out who owns this number and plan to somehow access my wife's phone to see whose name is saved under it. When I discovered this, my emotions got the best of me, and I started feeling angry. I tried convincing myself it was a mistake or some friend of hers, but last night, when I tried to get close to her, she turned me down again. She apologized, citing tiredness and a headache. I expressed my feeling that we weren't connecting well, and she apologized, promising to do better. However, she had made similar promises before without following through. Not wanting to push further, I just said goodnight and went to bed. This morning, she casually mentioned thinking about a trip to Vegas with some college girlfriends. Despite not being into gambling, it struck me as odd. I asked about her companions, and she named a few girls I had never met. It might all be a coincidence, but I can't shake this feeling that something is off. Further update recapping, I've had serious suspicions about my wife having an affair, so I decided to snoop around and found something interesting. Detailed cell phone records revealed countless late, night texts to one specific number, hundreds of them. Taking a chance, I called the number from a payphone, and it turned out to be one of her XIO workers, the same one I suspected. I had a sneaky feeling this guy might be trouble. But wait, it gets worse. I got her phone while she was in the shower, and guess what? The entire text conversation with this guy had been deleted. To make matters more incriminating, the number I called earlier was saved in her phone under a female name. Yes, she was trying to be sneaky about it. Now, my mind is filled with worries about all those out-of-town trips she took with this guy. Something is definitely not right here, and I'm starting to fear the worst. After discovering evidence of my wife's potential infidelity, I had to leave the house to clear my head. Despite my best efforts, I'm not sure what to do next. If I confront her now, she may come up with some excuse or lie. Should I wait and gather more evidence before approaching her? Or should I come clean immediately? I am seething with anger, and the thought of the other guy makes me want to lash out, but I know that won't solve anything. I fear that if I do confront her, she may only admit to minor flirtations, leaving me without enough proof of the bigger picture. I could really use some advice on how to proceed. I laid in wait like a lion stalking its prey, with a sneaky plan, pretending to be asleep, biding my time. After everyone was in bed and the house was silent, I kept one eye open, waiting for her to make a move. And sure enough, as the clock struck 12, my wife got out of bed and slinked into another room, quietly closing the door behind her. I waited a few minutes before getting up and slowly walking towards her. I caught her red, handed mid-text and stood over her before she could react. Her eyes widened in shock as she tried to hide her phone, but it was too late. I demanded to know who she was texting at this ungodly hour. She stammered and stuttered, trying to come up with a plausible excuse, but I wasn't buying it. She said it was just a girlfriend, but I knew there was more to it than that. I had her cornered, and she knew it. I couldn't believe what I had just done. My plan was risky, but it worked. I started kissing her and asked if she wanted to fool around. Just as I expected, she said she couldn't. I laughed and playfully teased her, saying that she must be more into the girlfriend she was texting than me. Then I started to tickle her, and we playfully wrestled. I managed to get the phone from her, and I could see the panic in her eyes. She tried to get it back, but I held it in the air, like I was playing keep away. I laughed and acted like I was having fun the entire time, telling her that I was going to call this girlfriend and ask if she was into my wife. As my wife pleaded with me not to call her friend, a sense of satisfaction overcame me. I walked away, pretending to end the conversation while secretly checking the text messages on her phone. One message caught my eye saying, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." My heart raced as I hit the call button, waiting for a response. A man's voice came through the speaker, and I hung up, unsure of what to say. Turning to my wife, I began reading the messages aloud. I could see fear in her eyes as I asked if the recipient was a guy or her friend. She stayed silent. Continuing, I demanded an explanation for the late-night texts to this guy. She stuttered, claiming she didn't know. I pressed on, asking if there was anything she needed to tell me. She couldn't speak, and that's when I dropped the bomb. Calmly, I said, "I know everything. I know when you wake up to text him, and I know who he is." Tears streamed down her face as she apologized, but I remained composed. I issued a stern warning about the crucial moments ahead, urging her to come clean. My wife finally confessed to flirting with her coworker, dealing with marital troubles, and it had escalated beyond casual chit-chat. She insisted they never did anything physical, but I wondered if she was telling the whole truth. I gave her an ultimatum: confess everything or leave. She cried and apologized, admitting to flirting with her coworker, who also faced marital issues, but I doubted she was telling me the whole truth. I told her we'd discuss things later, and she needed to pack a bag and leave for her mom's house. As she left, she asked if I would leave her. I didn't give her a direct answer and said we would talk later. However, she kept blowing up my phone, so I turned it off to get some space. Deciding to seek a marriage counselor, I pretended to want reconciliation to avoid suspicion. Last night's confrontation wasn't impulsive. I had a plan. While playfully wrestling and tickling her, I recorded the entire thing on my phone, just in case she falsely accused me of something later. I checked with a friend to ensure it was legal in our state, and he confirmed it was. Despite thinking she wouldn't do that, I can't be too careful given the circumstances. I'm a big guy, 6'4" and 240 pounds of muscle. I used to be a fighter, now training fighters. If there's any false accusation, I know the odds are against me. I could get arrested and lose everything, including my kids. That's why I keep recording everything as an insurance policy. My world has shattered into a million pieces. My family, my everything, has been destroyed. I'll miss out on 50% of my children's childhood. Despite sensing something was wrong, the reality blindsided me. The worst part, this is just the beginning of the pain. I want to confront the other guy, but I know I need to hold back. I heard through the grapevine that he found me terrifying when he first laid eyes on me, so I'd like to give him a good scare. And to top it all off, in one of the texts my wife and he shared, he referred to me as the animal after she made a jab at my intelligence. I may not have a college degree or make much money, but I'm not stupid. I love learning and reading books on all sorts of topics. But in this moment, I'm feeling anything but smart. For now, I'm just trying to make sense of this devastation. Update: my friend, who's an attorney, connected me with a family law specialist. The positive part is this attorney understands what it's like to be cheated on, having been in my shoes. My friend mentioned he's eager to help and won't charge me excessively. It's a good development amid the chaos. On the other hand, my wife came clean about having an affair. She started with the excuse of just flirting, but I didn't buy it. Eventually, she confessed it turned physical, lasting longer than I thought. She shared all the steamy details, and I'm honestly unsure how to feel about it. My head is spinning and I can't focus. The emotional roller coaster is too much. I had a serious talk with my wife, suggesting it's best for her to stay with her mom for now. Being around her became unbearable. I needed space, and so did our kids. They deserved normalcy, and I decided to take care of them. My attorney mentioned that staying in the house is a significant advantage in this situation. Although I decided our marriage was over, I kept it to myself. She'll find out when the papers are served. My mind is a mess, constantly replaying thoughts of my wife with this guy. Trying to stay focused on coaching fighters in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu helps a bit, but my mind often wanders. Physical exertion helps clear my head a little, but it's not a permanent fix. My kids have been my saving grace, and I focus all my attention and affection on them. Beyond BJJ and my children, I love learning and reading about new topics. Unfortunately, I can't concentrate on a paragraph without losing my train of thought. The text calling me a stupid animal makes me wonder what else was said. It feels like I'm trapped in a nightmare, and the happy-go-lucky me feels like a distant memory. As news of my situation spread, many people offered support, which is comforting. Surprisingly, some friends' wives offered to set me up with some beautiful women they know, some of whom seem interested. But as tempting as it may be, I have no intention of dating until this is all behind me, and even then, it might take a while. Right now, my focus is solely on my kids, ensuring they have stability during this tough time. My heart is shattered, and my kids bear the brunt of the fallout. Being a single dad wasn't something I ever envisioned, but here I am. Meanwhile, my wife seems to be spiraling into a dark abyss. The guy she cheated on me with apparently bailed on her, and she's been drowning her sorrows in drinks, going out with men she meets online. She's been reaching out to me, sobbing and begging me to take her back, saying she wants her old life back. It's tempting, but I know I can't let her back into my life. It seems she's turned her anger towards me once she learned how much she'll have to pay in monthly support. At least that means I can get some peace from her constant calls. My kids don't get it. I feel miserable every second they're not with me. I'm lonely all the time, spending most of my time at home. The girl at the coffee shop noticed I looked sad and asked if everything was okay. I guess I'm not hiding it well. People want to set me up, but I feel branded as the guy whose wife cheated, so I'm not interested. It's been so long, I have no idea how to date. The success of a few fighters on a public stage has been the only spark I felt in a long time. I'm not sure what I'll do next, and I need to snap out of it at some point, but I lack the motivation. I decided to take matters into my own hands and expose the other guy. With proof of the affair, I contacted his wife and presented the evidence. I couldn't sit back and let him get away with it. Initially, she didn't believe me, but later I heard there were significant problems in their marriage. They might still be together, but their relationship is hanging by a thread. I'm struggling with intense feelings of anger and frustration over the situation. Life is full of surprises. I never thought I'd be in this situation, but here I am. On a positive note, there's a girl I met through friends, and I can't stop thinking about her. She's gorgeous, but she's also about 14 years younger than me. The age gap seems significant, and my confidence is low, but I can't stop thinking about her. I haven't asked her out yet. The last 6 months have been an emotional roller coaster. I never expected such profound sadness. My usual happy-go-lucky personality has been replaced by a dark and melancholic one. After the terrible experience, I took some time for myself. During that time, the beautiful younger woman I was interested in got a long-term job assignment in Europe. Even though she was miles away, we kept in touch through technology. When her assignment was over, she returned, and we've been together ever since. She adores me and my kids and has a heart of gold. Before we met, I heard about this incredible woman who looked like Wonder Woman and was the kindest person you could ever imagine. I thought it was too good to be true, but she's everything and more. I believe we're ready to take the next steps in our relationship soon. My ex-wife's life has taken a turn for the worst since our divorce. She started drinking heavily, hooking up with random guys online, and took on more work, which took a toll on her. The last time I saw her, she looked like she had aged 15 years, as if her life force had been drained from her. Her best friend told me she's become a miserable person to be around. I still can't understand how someone who seemed to have everything under control could spiral into such a dark place. Her friend also confided in me that my ex-wife never expected me to leave her after the affair. I believe she thought she had control over me because of her high income. It's sad to see the consequences of her actions, but I hope she finds peace for the sake of our kids. Life is pretty good now, despite ongoing pandemic struggles. Looking back, I'm glad I didn't drag out my first marriage. Ending it was a tough call, but it was the right one. After that, it was just one step in front of the other. Every day, I pushed a little further, even though it felt like I was wading through quicksand. I now know that when you're in that situation, you have to think long-term. You might feel like the world is ending, but there's always hope. The key is to keep moving forward, no matter how hard it gets. Trust me, it gets pretty damn hard, but every day, try to do something that adds to your skill set. Not just motivational self-help stuff, but real skills. For me, I started making short films of my fighters and got into videography and editing. It's been a fun hobby, and I've learned a lot. I also read more books than ever before, trying to learn about all sorts of topics. Small things like these add up over time. You just have to keep at it and be patient with yourself. I discovered my wife's cheating, unraveled a dark plot, and got revenge on her affair partner. Seated at my desk, I checked my watch. It was almost 4. Soon I'd head home to kick off the weekend. This one was extra special, marking 20 years since I married Katie. I couldn't wait to whisk her away for a romantic weekend at our lake house. I picked up Katie's photo, a cherished gift from years ago, reminding me of our love. By the way, I'm Thomas West, but you can call me Tom. Katie and I fell in love in high school and tied the knot shortly after graduation. She insisted on waiting until our wedding day for closeness, and she was right. It made our honeymoon unforgettable. My parents were thrilled for us, giving me and keys to a townhouse to start. Dad explained it was just the beginning of a $1 million trust fund he set up after my birth. He rarely spoke of my biological mom, who passed when I was young, remarrying soon after. Rejected from the military due to diabetes, I pursued college with Katie. We dreamed of our futures until Jim, our son, arrived earlier than planned. Despite challenges, Katie became a teacher while I entered the business world, joining Ryder Industries. When I shared the news with Dad, he seemed proud but distant. I sensed something was amiss, but I refrained from pressing him. That's why I ultimately left the corporate world behind. For the next 16 years, life followed a typical routine. We worked, cared for our family, and enjoyed annual vacations. Due to time constraints, I quit martial arts classes about 5 years into marriage. Though Dad suggested exploring career options, I didn't dwell on it. Overall, Katie and I were content, despite the usual marital ups and downs. However, recently, I noticed changes in Katie's behavior. Initially, I attributed her mood shifts to the end of the school year and her reduced workload. She seemed withdrawn and occasionally sharp with me. I tried discussing it, but she brushed it off. Meanwhile, I was in the running for a VP position, competing with Alex Marr. Keeping the news to myself, I didn't think it influenced her behavior. Then it hit me. Our son Jim's graduation and acceptance to West Point might be causing her anxiety about an empty nest. To lift her spirits, I planned a surprise anniversary getaway. As I pondered this, my secretary's call interrupted. It was about a meeting with Jake Henderson, the CEO, likely regarding a promotion. I rose from my desk, tidied my tie in the bathroom mirror, and headed to the elevator, ensuring my smartphone was set to record the coming meeting. Arriving on the TH floor, home to the company's top brass, I made my way to Henderson's suite, where his assistant, Brenda, welcomed me. "Mr. Henderson is ready for you, Mr. West," she said, her grin piquing my curiosity. Henderson's voice invited me inside. As I entered his office, taking a seat opposite him, Harvey, one of Henderson's guards, poured me bourbon, a gesture of familiarity with my preferences. Henderson, relaxed in demeanor, took a sip of his drink before addressing me with a smile. After exchanging pleasantries, Henderson praised my politeness and inquired about my family. I assured him all was well, mentioning our son's recent departure for West Point and our upcoming 20th anniversary celebration. "Married for 2 decades?" Jake inquired, offering congratulations. "I called you here not to mess with you. I like you. Let's discuss my upcoming promotion. It's between you and Marlo. The board needs to gauge your flexibility, your response to stress, and your dedication to our goals. Understand, a manager's day doesn't end at—" "I get it," I replied. "What specifics does the board seek?" They want to witness your reactions firsthand, Jake explained. They've reviewed your records, but they need more. I'm not sure I follow, I admitted. Jake grinned, sipping his bourbon. You'll get it, he assured. How's your marriage? Solid, Mr. Henderson, I affirmed, sipping my drink. Why do you ask? If it's as strong as you claim, cancel your weekend plans, he instructed. Your wife should understand. He signaled Harvey, who ushered in Lenny Jameson, accompanied by Katie. She wore a revealing dress, surprising me with her appearance. The dress barely covered her backside. Though she glanced my way, she seemed unaware of me observing her medicated state. I noticed something white in one nostril. Katie, I addressed her. What's going on? Why are you dressed like that? She remained unresponsive, her eyes glazed. Turning to Henderson, I demanded clarification. What's happening? Why is she here like this? She's clearly medicated. What did you give her? Henderson chuckled, admitting to medicating her with a potent concoction. He gestured for Lenny to expose her further, revealing her bosom. I attempted to rise but found myself paralyzed, realizing Harvey had medicated me too. Henderson's sinister grin widened as Lenny undressed Katie completely, ignoring my protest. Henderson proceeded to engage in carnal acts with her, her glazed eyes betraying her medicated state. Furious and struggling against Harvey's grip, I glared at Henderson. I'll eliminate you, I yelled. Henderson smirked. Is that how you speak to family? He taunted. And in front of your dear wife? She won't be my wife, I snapped. And what do you mean by family? Henderson revealed our shared parentage, shocking me. That's not true, I protested. Why? For many reasons, he explained. Firstly, as CEO, I have executive privilege. Secondly, I've always wanted to dominate my younger brother. You didn't think I hired you for your skills, did you? He revealed his calculated manipulation, claiming it was a long-term plan to reclaim what he believed was rightfully his. Have you planned this all along? I demanded. Of course, he admitted. It's the long game. Now, your fate and your wife's are in my hands. He outlined his intention to seek revenge for past grievances, shocking me with his twisted motives. You're sick, I accused. Henderson shrugged. Maybe, he conceded. It is what it is. Here's the plan, Tom, he began again. No divorce. Your wife now serves me financially and personally. She's my exclusive companion, accessible anytime, anywhere. I'm whisking her to New York for a board presentation. Relax. She'll return, albeit perhaps disheveled. You won't get away with this, I retorted. He chuckled. Deal, he countered. You're powerless. He signaled Lenny, who struck me, apologizing. Just business, Mr. West. I awoke in a hospital bed, machines humming around me. Dad, exhausted, sat nearby. A nurse tended to me, offering ice. Dad explained I'd been unconscious for 4 days since Friday night. 4 days? I echoed. It's Tuesday, Dad confirmed. You were dumped at the ER. What happened? He asked, concern etched on his face. Later, upon the doctor's arrival, I acknowledged him. Good afternoon, Mr. West. I'm Dr. Pierce, he greeted. I'm glad to see you with us again. How do you feel? It's like I was hit by a truck, I replied. Everything hurts. I have no doubt, he concurred, noting my injuries. You've been pretty banged up. Nothing broken, but some bruised ribs and a small bruise. We were worried about a concussion. After his examination, he outlined the plan. We'll do x-rays and keep you overnight for observation. If all goes well, you can go home tomorrow. My dad called the police, I mentioned. They want to speak with you, he informed me. Afterward, Detective Blackstone introduced himself, eager to hear my story. I recounted what I could, then remembered my phone. Did you find my phone? I asked my father. Yes, he said, handing it over. I noticed unfamiliar text messages and decided to check them later. I found the audio recording and played it for the detective, capturing everything, including the sounds of the assault. I focused on what occurred afterward. Okay, get him out of here, Henderson ordered the guards. Take him to the hospital and say you found him there. Got it? Got it, boss, Lenny affirmed. We heard movement as they dragged me, then their conversation as they placed me in the car. Careful, Harvey cautioned. I don't want blood on the seats. He's a real pain, Lenny chuckled. Aren't they all? Harvey laughed before the recording ended. We have hospital security footage, Ryan explained. They threw you out of the car before driving off. EMTs found you and brought you inside. The car is registered to Ryder Industries. I informed HR, Dad added. Henderson already put you on sick leave for a week. Any word from Katie? I inquired. Dad shook his head. None, he replied. I've been trying to reach her, but no luck. We'll issue a bulletin, Ryan declared. Do you have a recent photo? Yes, I confirmed, retrieving my pictures. Okay, he agreed. Send this to me, along with the audio recording. I'll forward the photo to the NYPD and issue a warrant for Henderson and his thugs. Do you want to press charges? Absolutely, I affirmed. Definitely. Then we'll proceed, he assured. Just relax and let the professionals handle it, he advised. Okay, detective, I acknowledged gratefully. Thank you. We'll keep in touch, Ryan promised, handing me his card. Call if you remember anything else. After he left, I turned to my father. Is what Henderson said true? I inquired. Yes and no, he replied. His father had his way with your biological mother, but she was already pregnant. After that, I filed for divorce and an alienation of affection lawsuit against Henderson. We couldn't do a DNA test back then, but we all have the same blood type, Dad said. He wouldn't bore me with all the details, but things at home worsened. My biological mother turned to drinking and medications, eventually dying from an overdose 6 months after I was born. Damn, I reacted. The lawsuit against Henderson and Ryder was ongoing, Dad revealed, but they settled out of court using the money to set up my trust fund. He couldn't disclose any details due to the agreement. About a year later, he met Patricia. She loved you from the start, insisting on adopting you after we got married. Unable to have children, she considered you her own. So, how did you know I was really your son? I asked. Remember the motorcycle accident when you were 16? He queried. Yeah, I recalled. Well, he elaborated, after I was injured, I requested a DNA test at the hospital to confirm our relationship, and I pressed. The results showed over a 99% likelihood that I'm your father, he explained. It means your biological mother was pregnant with you before Henderson's involvement. For me, you're my dad no matter what, I assured him, bringing a smile to his face. What happened to Henderson? I inquired. Dad informed me he died from a stroke around the time I entered college. His son stepped up as the new general director. I'd hoped the younger Henderson had learned from his father's mistakes, but I was mistaken, Dad explained. That's why you weren't thrilled about me joining there, right? I questioned. He nodded. Yes, he affirmed. I wished to tell you, but I couldn't. I appreciate it now. It's not on you, Dad, I reassured. I can't fathom how Katie could fall for his nonsense after all this time. It's baffling, I remarked. She may have been medicated, but something feels off. I pondered why she was there and in that attire. Just then, a knock sounded at the door. Yes? I called out. Brenda, Henderson's assistant, peeked in. May I come in? She asked timidly. Certainly, Brenda, I welcomed her. What's up? She entered, holding a bouquet of flowers and a large card. We all pitched in and got this for you, she explained, placing the flowers on the nightstand. She handed me the card. I'm really sorry about all of this, Brenda expressed. Did you know what Henderson planned? I inquired. I knew he had something with your wife, she admitted, but not this. She added, pointing to me, what went down? I probed. That morning, he gave me a company card, told me to fetch your wife, said she was expecting me. He instructed me to take her out, get her a revealing dress, and then to a salon, Brenda disclosed. He also insisted that she get a bikini wax. A full wax? I questioned. Yeah, a Brazilian wax, Brenda recounted. I had a pretty good idea of what he meant. This isn't the first time he's pulled something like this. So your boss is using you to groom his girls? Dad questioned. Brenda's face flushed red, and she wisely averted her gaze. Did you know he medicated her? Dad pressed. He medicates all the women he sleeps with, Mr. West, she admitted. He loves to experiment. Has he ever medicated you? Dad inquired. She nodded. One time, she disclosed. He gave me just a small amount, she continued. Said it was only a quarter of the normal dose. It kept me going for about an hour. Do you know how much he gave my wife? I interjected. She shook her head. No, I don't, she admitted. He mentioned giving Katie 3 times the usual amount. I informed her. Her eyes widened, and she covered her face with her hands. Oh my God, she exclaimed. I had no clue. Your poor wife must have been out of her mind for hours. I bet she didn't even realize you were there. This stuff really messes you up. When I walked into your office, you knew what was going to happen, didn't you? I probed. She nodded solemnly. I knew, she confirmed, but I didn't expect him to be so cruel to you, honestly. Do you know where Henderson and my wife are now? I asked. Last I heard, they're still in New York, she replied. Would you be willing to talk to the police? Dad asked. I'll do whatever I can to help, she promised. She glanced back at me with tears in her eyes. I'm truly sorry about this, Mr. West. Just one more thing, Brenda, I added. What's going on? She inquired. Did my wife have any idea what was going to happen? I questioned. She nodded. I'm pretty sure she had an idea, Mr. West, she replied, I know Mr. Henderson has been in touch with her quite often in the past month or so, inviting her out to dinner multiple times. They've had long lunches. I'm not sure if anything happened between them or not. He never disclosed it to me. But do you think they were involved? I pressed. It's highly probable, but I can't say for certain. I'm not privy to all the details, she admitted. You seem to assist Henderson with things like this. Frequently, correct? Dad inquired. Quite frequently, she admitted quietly. So you condone his behavior, he probed. She shook her head. You misunderstand, she clarified. I'm a single mother with a child who has special needs, and Mr. Henderson compensates me generously for my assistance and my discretion. Well, your silence is what led to my son ending up in the hospital this time, young lady, he retorted, his patience waning. She took a step back as he glared at her. Mr. West, I truly didn't know they intended injury to your son. I would have warned him if I had known, she defended herself. Dad reclined in his chair, silently observing her. Brenda, the police detective will be reaching out to you regarding this matter, I informed her. I advise you to be available and fully cooperate. Understand? She nodded. I understand, Mr. West, she affirmed. All right, I said, and please convey my gratitude to everyone for the flowers and card. I will, she promised, dabbing at a tear in her eye. Once again, I'm sorry. With that, she turned and exited the room. After the door closed, I turned to my father. That sheds some light on things, I remarked. Katie has been acting a bit off since school ended. Initially, I thought it was because Jim had gone to West Point. We'll uncover the truth, he assured. Another knock sounded and a hospital attendant wheeled in a food cart. Dad grinned and rose. Dinner time, he announced. Better head home before Mom sends out a search party, he joked. Take care, son. Rest up. See you in the morning. Thanks, Dad, I replied. Say hi to Mom for me and tell her I love her. We do, son, he affirmed. And hey, love you too. We fist bumped, and he exited. The attendant smirked at Dad's departure, then served my meal. It smelled decent, and hunger gnawed at me after days without eating. I devoured the meatloaf and potatoes, relishing the mushroom sauce. Though not up to Mom's or Katie's caliber, it sufficed. Even the broccoli, which I usually avoid, tasted all right. After finishing dessert, I sipped coffee and checked my texts. 4 messages awaited, each with a video. The first from Friday read, Enjoy. Bet you wish you weren't here. Unfamiliar, I hesitantly opened it. Katie stood before grinning men, her dress akin to the one Henderson forced her to wear. Recognizing the board members, I braced for the worst. They stripped her, and she complied. Anguish brooded, it had bolstered the lawsuit. Summoning courage for the next message from Saturday morning, regret filled me as Katie frolicked with men. The third, late Saturday, depicted her with multiple partners. The fourth, from early Sunday, diverged. Katie and Henderson stared into the camera. Her bloodshot eyes and dark circles revealed torment. Henderson sneered. This is your wife's new life, he taunted. Turning to Katie, he commanded, Tell him who I am, honey. Jake Henderson is my master, she stated, her voice devoid of any emotion. That's correct, he confirmed. And what's your new role? Henderson inquired. I am my master's undressed lovemaking toy, she declared. I engage in carnal activities with whomever he commands, whenever he commands, and however he commands, as frequently as he commands. Very well, Jake acknowledged, and convey to that idiot that he won't ever touch you again. You betrayed man, Katie asserted, pointing a finger at the camera. You'll never lay a hand on me again. Henderson chuckled at her remark before addressing the camera. And remember, he said, don't cause trouble, or the next time I have Harvey and Lenny talk to you, you might not wake up. See you later, loser. Goodbye. The video concluded. A surge of emotions washed over me, hatred, anger, sadness, disappointment. I couldn't believe what I had just witnessed and heard. It seemed evident that he had manipulated her. I glanced at the wedding ring on my finger. It held no significance anymore. So I removed it and tossed it onto the nightstand. Perhaps I could sell it for a few bucks at a pawn shop. At that instant, I was resolved to divorce Katie. I didn't care if Jake approved or not. Furthermore, I was determined to make him suffer. But how? Alienation of affection lawsuits were a possibility when my father divorced, but not anymore. I entertained thoughts of damaging that despicable fool, but in all honesty, he wasn't worth jeopardizing my freedom for. I contacted Ryan and briefed him on the videos and Henderson's threats. He requested that I forward them to him and assured me he'd be in touch. Following his instructions, I powered off my phone. I contemplated reaching out to Kathy, but concluded it would be futile. I placed my phone on the nightstand and turned on the TV, hoping to distract myself from what I had just witnessed. Eventually, I drifted off to sleep and found myself dreaming of happier times when I had a loving and faithful wife. The next morning, I awoke to the sounds of nurses bustling about my room, checking my vital signs and monitoring the equipment. 2 of them escorted me to the radiology department for additional x-rays before returning me to my room. Once back, an orderly brought me breakfast. Shortly after I finished my bacon and egg breakfast, Dr. Pierce entered my room with good news. "Everything went smoothly, and you're clear to go home," he informed me. He prescribed medication for the pain and provided a set of instructions. "Discharge paperwork will take about an hour, so why not give your parents a call to come pick you up?" he suggested. "By the time they arrive, you should be ready to go. Take care of yourself and make sure to schedule a follow-up appointment with your regular doctor within a week." "Thank you, Doc," I replied. "I'll do that." After he left, I contacted my parents and shared the positive news. About an hour later, they arrived at my room. Mom enveloped me in a hug, tears shimmering in her eyes. "Oh, Tom, I'm so sorry you had to go through this," she expressed. "How are you feeling?" "Could be better, Mom," I admitted. "Well, I whipped up some of my lasagna for you and kept it warm in the oven," she informed me. I always adored my mother's lasagna. It was rich with layers of cheese, mushrooms, and meat filling, a taste sensation unlike any other. I looked at her with gratitude. "Thank you, Mom," I said sincerely. "Your lasagna never fails to brighten my day." "I'm glad, son," she replied. "Your father filled me in on what happened, and I'm furious. I have half a mind to give that woman a piece of my mind." Dad and I exchanged a knowing glance and chuckled. There was no doubt in my mind that if she were here, Mom would have taken Katie to task. "Any updates?" Dad inquired. I briefed him on the videos and Henderson's threat. "Videos?" Mom questioned. "Trust me, Mom, you don't want to see them," I cautioned. "They're beyond awful." "I guess you'll need the name of a good divorce attorney," Dad remarked. "Yeah," I agreed. "There's no way to overlook what she did or is probably still doing, plus I need to break it to Jim, or it's going to devastate him." "All right, I'll make some calls," Dad promised. Just then, a nurse entered with my discharge papers and instructions. Insisting I use a wheelchair, she wheeled me out while Mom and Dad walked alongside. At the loading dock, I slid into the back seat. Dad drove us home, stopping at a pharmacy so I could pick up my pain medication. I noticed my car parked in the driveway when we arrived. "Your mom and I retrieved your car from Ryder on Saturday," Dad informed me. "Kat's car is still in the garage." We entered the house, and its emptiness without Katie became painfully apparent. The aroma of lasagna wafting from the oven lifted my spirits a tad. "I hope you don't mind, but I tidied up a bit yesterday afternoon," Mom mentioned. "It was getting a bit stuffy." "Not at all, Mom," I assured her. "Thanks for everything." Just then, we spotted a dark sedan parked outside. I recognized Ryan stepping out of the driver's side, accompanied by another man in a suit. I welcomed them in. "Detective Blackstone," I greeted. "Please come in." I held the door as they entered. Ryan shook my hand and I introduced him to Mom. "Can we offer you gentlemen something to drink?" Mom offered. "Coffee soda?" Ryan declined. "No, ma'am, but thank you," he replied. Then, turning to the other man, "Mr. West, this is Detective Hawthorne from the NYPD Homicide Department." I was taken aback momentarily but extended my hand to Hawthorne. "Please have a seat," I invited, and we settled in. "Homicide?" I echoed. Hawthorne nodded, presenting a photograph. Katie's face was recognizable, but she appeared lifeless, her complexion unsettling. "Can you confirm the identity of the woman in this photo?" Hawthorne inquired. "That looks like my wife, Katie," I confirmed, "but she was alive early Sunday morning. I have a video." "Did she have any distinguishing marks or tattoos?" Hawthorne probed. "Yes, a small dolphin tattoo on her upper right thigh," I recalled. "She got it on a dare 15 years ago." Hawthorne glanced at Ryan and then back at me, his expression somber. "I regret to inform you, Mr. West, but it appears that your wife may have been murdered," he stated. "Murdered?" I exclaimed. "How? When?" "That's what we're investigating, Mr. West," Hawthorne replied. "The coroner is still examining her, but the initial assessment suggests she died from a massive heart attack." "But wouldn't that rule out murder?" I questioned. "Well, her body was discovered in a shallow grave in Central Park yesterday afternoon," Hawthorne disclosed. "In my experience, such findings typically indicate foul play. We're awaiting toxicology results, which may provide more insight." "What more can you tell us?" I recounted the entire ordeal to them. Ryan took notes while listening attentively, though he had heard the details before. Retrieving my phone, I played the audio recording and then the video for them. Mom, overwhelmed, burst into tears and Dad ushered her out of the room, leaving me alone with the detectives. After they finished viewing the footage, I shared Brenda's account. They made notes and exchanged glances before addressing me. "This clarifies the bruises and condition of Mrs. West's body," Hawthorne remarked. Turning to me, he continued, "This woman, Harris, is she on duty today?" "To my knowledge, yes," I replied. "We need to speak with her." Hawthorne directed at Ryan, who nodded in agreement. He then turned to me again. "What do you know about the medication Henderson mentioned, the super ecstasy?" he inquired. "Not much beyond what Brenda told me and what I experienced," I admitted. "The doctor mentioned that the substance they used on me had already left my system." "Henderson and his associates, any insights there?" Ryan pressed. "Henderson's private jet departed from New York last night. According to the pilot's filed flight plan, they were returning here, but there's no record of the plane landing," I explained. "Ryder has branches nationwide. He could be anywhere." "Excellent," Hawthorne remarked, turning to Ryan. "We'll need to involve the FAA and possibly the FBI." "I have a contact at the local FAA office," Ryan offered. "We can head there after executing a search warrant on Ryder." Hawthorne nodded in agreement. "What's the next step?" I inquired. "If your accounts are accurate, this could escalate into a federal case since Henderson transported your wife across state lines," Ryan stated. "We're considering multiple charges against him, including murder and potentially kidnapping." "In the meantime," Hawthorne added, "my team will continue their investigation and recover your wife's body. This process may take several days. We also plan to detain the individuals seen in the video for questioning." I nodded in acknowledgement. Ryan glanced at Hawthorne before addressing me. "I'd like to speak with Mr. West privately if you don't mind," he requested. Hawthorne nodded at me. "Of course. I'll step out to make a few calls. I'll be just outside," he said before exiting the room. Ryan glanced at me before proceeding. "I sincerely apologize for all of this, Mr. West," he conveyed. "Thank you, Detective," I responded, shaking his hand. After he departed, Ryan redirected his attention to me. "Mr. West, Tom," he began, "I wanted to have a private conversation with you regarding what transpired with your wife." "I appreciate that, Ryan," I acknowledged. "I'll spare you the graphic details," Ryan began, "but based on what I've gathered, your wife's final 48 hours were utterly harrowing. I consulted with a medical examiner back east and he corroborated my suspicions. I don't believe your wife consented to what was done to her. I suspect she was subjected to a brutal assault. She was. Suffered and exploited by a group of power-hungry individuals. Look, Ryan, I understand your intentions, and I'm grateful," I responded. "I truly do. But the reality is, Katie and Henderson were involved for about a month before this incident. I'm not entirely sure what transpired between them, but I have a fairly good idea. Katie could have put an end to all of this prior to last Friday, but she chose not to. I don't understand her actions, and now I never will." "I understand," Ryan murmured. He retrieved a business card from his pocket and handed it to me. "I suggest you consult with Dr. Harmon. She's highly reputable. Give her a call." "All right, I'll do that." "Thank you," I acknowledged. "I'm concerned that Henderson's associates might return for you," he expressed. "I would assign officers to protect you, but unfortunately our resources are limited. However, I'll instruct the dispatcher to increase patrols in your area." "Do you want a firearm?" "No," I replied. He nodded. "All right," he stated. "In that case, always keep your doors and windows secured. If you suspect anything, dial emergency immediately." "I'll remember that, Ryan," I assured him. Just then, Hawthorne re-entered the house. "I just spoke with your partner, Johnson. He informed us Henderson is wanted nationwide, and we have search warrants ready to execute." Ryan nodded and stood up. "We'll keep in touch, Tom," he said, shaking my hand. Hawthorne extended his hand. "I offer my condolences for your loss, Mr. West," he conveyed. "Thank you, Detective," I replied. After they departed, my parents returned and took a seat. "Are you going to be all right, son?" Dad inquired. "I think so, Dad," I replied. "I have a couple more calls to make, and I'm not particularly looking forward to them." In many ways, that's true. I needed to inform Jim about his mother's situation, and I also had to reach out to Katie's parents. "Understood?" Dad asked. "Understood." "If you need anything, just give us a call, all right?" Dad reiterated. "I'll do that, Dad." "Thanks," I affirmed. We exchanged embraces, and I watched them depart. I dialed Jim's cell phone and left a message, anticipating it might take some time for him to return my call. The next call on my agenda was one I dreaded. Katie's father, retired Marine Colonel Bill Anderson, earned the moniker Bloody Bill for his heroic exploits in Afghanistan, allegedly dispatching multiple Taliban fighters with just a knife. His uniform boasted more ribbons and medals than I'd ever seen. He and Katie's mother, Alice, had settled in the country after his military service. I hesitated to break the news of Katie's death to the colonel, but we had a good rapport and he insisted I call him Dad. Summoning courage, I called him. "Anderson Residence," he answered. "It's me, Tom," I said. "Are you okay?" he asked, sensing my distress. "Not really, Dad," I replied. "Katie's dead." Shocked, he demanded details. After a brief explanation, he decided they'd visit at 4 p.m., adding a quip about civilian time. "Got it, Dad," I chuckled, "and I'll have coffee ready." With that, we hung up, and I sank into my chair, overwhelmed by grief. My world had crumbled, my marriage had faltered, and now Katie, the love of my life, was gone. Despite my disdain for her actions, I couldn't bear the thought of her passing away, unlike Henderson, who I viewed differently. I rose and indulged in my mom's comforting lasagna, a remedy that had always eased my troubles. Cleaning up afterward, I roamed the house. Each corner triggered memories of Katie and our life together. Realizing I couldn't remain in this house, I resolved to sell it once everything settled, opting for something smaller. Discovering Katie's phone on the nightstand, I unlocked it with her familiar 4-digit code. Annoyingly, it happened at that moment. Examining her call log, I noticed repeated calls from Henderson and Brenda's workplace, particularly on Friday morning. Scanning her messages, I found an exchange with Henderson from a few months back, lacking significant context. Perusing her emails, I found nothing incriminating. Turning off the phone, I placed it back on the nightstand. Checking the time, I realized it was already 3:45 p.m. I had no clue how much time I had spent on Katie's phone. Knowing the colonel's punctuality, I headed to the kitchen and brewed fresh coffee, strong, just the way he preferred it. As the digital clock on the coffee pot struck 4 p.m., the doorbell chimed. I knew it was the colonel, so I welcomed him and Alice inside. "Damn it, son, didn't anyone ever teach you to duck?" the colonel exclaimed upon seeing my face. "My father tried, but I don't think I ever fully grasped it," I half-joked. "Come in." As they entered, another car pulled into the driveway. I observed a tall, lanky man stepping out and approaching the door. "I hope you don't mind," Bill mentioned. "After what you told me, I took the liberty of calling for reinforcements." By then, the tall man had entered the house, carrying a laptop bag and 2 more bags, leaving me wondering what was happening. Bill introduced him. "Ron, this is my brother-in-law, Tom West," he said. "Tom, meet Ron Wiseman. We served together in the Corps." "Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Wiseman," I greeted, shaking his hand. "Please call me Ron," he insisted. I glanced at the colonel. "Ron and his wife have experience dealing with individuals like Henderson," the colonel explained. "Plus, he possesses certain skills that could prove valuable." "What kind of skills?" I inquired. "I'm an accountant by profession," Ron disclosed. "An accountant?" I echoed. Ron grinned as he set his bags down. "Well, I'm a bit more than just that," he elaborated. "I'm involved with a special task force and have access to information that, as the colonel mentioned, could be quite useful." "I see," I responded. "Well, please have a seat, and I'll fetch us some coffee." Alice joined me in the kitchen, and we returned with 4 large cups of coffee. Hot, fresh, black, and strong, just how the colonel preferred it. Alice handed him his cup, and after a cautious sip, he remarked, "Not bad, Tom, thank you. Now, why don't you bring us all up to speed?" I recounted the events up until Ryan and Hawthorne left the house earlier. "You mentioned video recordings?" the colonel inquired. "Yes," I confirmed. "They're quite disturbing." "I'd still like to see them," he insisted. "Don't worry, after 30 years in the Corps, there's not much that Alice and I haven't seen." I retrieved my phone and played the videos for them. They watched all 4 before I returned the phone. Bill and Alice seemed visibly upset, but Ron remained composed, pausing the videos at times to scrutinize the individuals involved. "It's evident she was medicated," Alice remarked. Bill and Ron nodded in agreement. "But with what exactly, I'm not certain," I admitted. "Brenda, Henderson's assistant, mentioned something about super ecstasy or the like." "And Henderson medicated you too?" Ron inquired. "Yes," I confirmed, but by the time I was treated at the hospital, it had already left my system. By then, Ron had set up his laptop and connected to the internet. "Those 2 thugs who attacked you," he continued. "Did you catch them on video?" "Yes," I replied. I opened one of the videos and paused it so Ron could examine it closely. "Those 2 big guys over there are Harvey Strauss and Lenny Jameson," I pointed out, indicating them in the footage. "Can you send me these videos?" Ron requested, providing his email address. "Certainly," I agreed. I forwarded the videos to him, and Ron confirmed receipt of the files and began analyzing them. "You know, those aren't their real names," Ron remarked. "No, I wasn't aware," I admitted. "What are their real identities?" They're former criminals, Ron disclosed. They disappeared after their boss, James Brolin, also known as Jimmy the Weasel, was found murdered in his own bed. The authorities have been searching for them for quite some time. How long have they been working for Henderson? I believe it's been a couple of years now, I replied. Why do you ask? They vanished around that time, Ron noted. Are you suggesting they've made Henderson a wanted man across the nation? Exactly, Ron confirmed. All right, he said, clicking his mouse. Let's see what we can dig up. He continued working, letting his program run in the background. So, here's the plan, the colonel interjected. After discussing further, Ron agreed to remain with me until these individuals were neutralized. I'm not comfortable with you being alone here while they're still out there, he expressed. Ron, keep me posted as soon as you get any updates on them, all right? The colonel instructed. I'll take it from there. Understood, Colonel, Ron replied. And what about you? I inquired of Bill. It's better if you're kept in the dark, son, he replied. Let's just say Marines handle our own business and leave it at that. Don't worry, Henderson and his associates will face consequences one way or another. You mentioned you're off until Monday due to illness, he asked. Yes, I confirmed. What's your plan after this? He probed. I can't remain at Ryder after all this, I stated. I've decided to resign, giving 2 weeks' notice starting Monday. Additionally, I'm considering selling this house and downsizing. I can't blame you, he sympathized. Any update on when Katie's body will be released? It could be several days, according to what Hawthorne told me, I relayed. But if you need assistance with final arrangements, don't hesitate to ask, he offered. Thank you, Dad. I appreciate it, I expressed. Bill rose, signaling the end of the meeting. Alice and Ron followed suit. We should head out, dear, Bill addressed Alice. Ron, keep me informed of any developments. Will do, Ron assured. Bill turned to me and embraced me, a gesture that took me by surprise. In all my years knowing him, I had never seen him hug another man. Everything will work out, son, he reassured me. Alice stepped forward after he released me and embraced me gently. I'm truly sorry for what happened, Tom, she comforted. Don't worry about a thing, all right? I won't, Mom, I assured her. Thank you for coming. You're welcome, she responded. And with that, they departed. Shortly after their departure, my phone rang. Seeing it was Jim, I answered and sat down beside him to recount the events. At first, he was taken aback by the news. Dad, that just doesn't sound like something she could do, Jim remarked. I know, it doesn't make any sense to me either, I concurred. Are there any clues as to why she did this? He inquired. No, son. I checked her phone and email, but there's nothing there, I explained. Maybe she has a burner phone somewhere, he suggested. A burner phone? I questioned. Yeah, one of those disposable gadgets you toss away after using pay-as-you-go minutes, Jim clarified. Perhaps she has one hidden that you haven't found yet. My mind immediately shifted to the videos they sent me. They originated from a number I didn't recognize. Maybe it was her burner phone. If so, then no one could trace where she is now. You might be onto something, I acknowledged. I hadn't considered that. We conversed a bit more, and Jim concluded by asking me to inform him when his mother's body would be released for burial. After the call, I mentioned the burner phone theory to Ron. That makes sense, he agreed. If you have the number, I'll see what I can uncover. I provided him with the number, and he initiated another program to trace it. A few minutes later, he had his answer. This number corresponds to a phone purchased here in the city, he reported. As you suspected, it's a burner phone. The number is registered to Ryder and was last detected Tuesday morning in NYC. There hasn't been any activity on it since you received the last video. Any idea where he might be now? I inquired. None, he replied. As far as we know, it was disassembled and disposed of in the river. He returned to his computer, prompting me to prepare a guest room upstairs since I didn't know how long he'd stay. He remained until Saturday, spending much time on the computer. While unaware of his activities, we'd grown closer since his arrival on Wednesday. He disclosed being a Marine sniper, now working for a federal private task force. Despite his background as a CPA, most of his work involved research. He shared tidbits about his and his wife Amy's interactions with executives, which intrigued me. The previous night, he requested if Amy could join for the weekend, to which I agreed. She arrived Saturday morning, and after introductions, they retreated to the guest room. Giving them space, I occupied myself in the garage for about an hour before returning inside. Ron and Amy were engrossed in something on his computer when I joined. Any updates? I inquired. Yes, Ron affirmed. Firstly, the FBI has taken over the investigation. Secondly, about half an hour ago, I received a solid hit on our targets. All three? I queried. Yeah, they're near Colorado Springs, Ron confirmed. I've already notified the colonel. Then he'll handle it himself. There's something else. What is it? I inquired. I was able to access the official autopsy report on your wife, he disclosed. What does it say? I pressed. According to the report, your wife did indeed suffer a massive heart attack from the chemicals Henderson administered, Ron revealed. But that's not what ended her life. They discovered soil particles in her lungs. What does that mean? I asked, my voice faltering. It means she was still alive when they buried her, Ron stated grimly. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Barely alive, but alive nonetheless. I'm sorry, there's more. More, I exclaimed in disbelief. There was also extensive bruising around her private parts, Ron continued. And a toxicology report revealed significant levels of various chemicals in her bloodstream, including ecstasy and cocaine. I'm sorry, Tom, but it appears the last hours of her life were brutal. I couldn't believe she willingly participated in all of this. What do you think happened? I questioned. From what I've gathered, Henderson and his cohorts likely had quite a wild party, he speculated. Your wife was so under the influence of what Henderson gave her that she lost control. At some point, she suffered a heart attack. Instead of seeking medical help, they likely presumed she was deceased, so they disposed of her by burying her. I sank into a chair, stunned by Ron's revelations. Amy approached and embraced me as tears streamed down my face. Henderson and his accomplices are wanted for murder, conspiracy to commit murder, the production and distribution of various controlled substances, and racketeering among other charges, Ron disclosed. The other individuals in your videos have already been apprehended and charged, but Henderson is the primary target. What do you think his fate will be? I inquired. Ron shrugged. Who can say? He replied. One can only speculate about the workings of the courts these days. The next morning, I was awakened by my phone ringing. Glancing at my watch, I saw it was 4:30 a.m. I wondered who could be calling at such an hour. Answering, I heard a masked voice. Check your text messages, it instructed before hanging up. Opening the message, I found a video attached. In it, 3 naked bound men were dumped in front of a brick building. Recognizing them as Henderson, Lenny, and Harvey, I watched as a sign was hung around Henderson's neck, confessing to Katie West's murder. I pondered if the FBI would get involved. Finishing the video, I returned to sleep. 4 hours later, I descended to find Amy cooking breakfast in the kitchen. I hope you don't mind me trying my hand in your kitchen, she said. Ron gets cranky without his morning bacon. Not at all, I replied. I get a little cranky myself without bacon. Help yourself. After she finished, we all sat down to eat. As we finished, there was a knock at the door. Opening it, I found Ryan standing there. May I come in? He asked. Of course, I replied, ushering him in. Introducing him to Ron and Amy as friends of my father-in-law, I offered him coffee. No, I won't stay long, he declined. I just wanted to inform you that Henderson and 2 of his top accomplices were apprehended in Colorado Springs early this morning. That's good news, right? I inquired. Yes, he confirmed. They're talking. There are some questions about the circumstances of their capture, but I assume you're not privy to that. No, I'm not, I asserted. I've been here all night. Ron and Amy can vouch for that. Uh-huh, he responded. Well, I just wanted to keep you informed. Now I'll leave you to it. Take care of yourself. Thanks, Ryan, I expressed as he departed. Turning to Ron, I posed a question. You don't happen to know anything about this, do you? Don't ask and I won't fib, he replied with a knowing grin. I still suggest giving your father-in-law a call to express gratitude. Nodding in agreement, I retrieved my phone. Anderson, Bill greeted upon answering. Dad, just wanted to inform you that the police paid me a visit, I relayed. Henderson and his cohort were apprehended in Colorado Springs. Well, that's a relief, he responded. Ron advised me to extend my thanks, I added. Did he indeed? Bill inquired. Yes, I confirmed. So I wanted to express my appreciation. You're welcome, son, he replied warmly. I heard you received a call last night. That's correct, I affirmed. That sign was quite the touch. Do you think it gave them a lead? His grin indicated agreement. I sure hope so, he said. We'll catch up soon, son. Take care of yourself. I will, Dad, I assured. Thank you. The next Monday, I resigned from work, receiving understanding but regretful farewells. Then I visited a realtor to initiate the process of selling our longtime home, bracing myself for the emotional and logistical challenges. A week later, Katie's body was released by the New York Medical Examiner as her parents arranged her funeral. Despite conflicting emotions, I attended mainly to support Bill and Alice, who had been kind to me during this ordeal. Jim managed to take a break from West Point to join me at the funeral, where we shared memories and mourned together. I chose not to divulge Katie's actions to him, wanting to preserve his fond memories of her. Following the funeral, I consulted with a lawyer about potentially suing Ryder, as there seemed to be a strong case against Henderson and the board of directors, given their legal troubles. The trial against Henderson and the involved board members felt endless. The U.S. attorney pursued the death penalty for Henderson, while the defense filed numerous motions. I testified about my own experience and listened to others' testimonies. Brenda also testified, revealing that Katie wasn't the only victim of Henderson's medication and exploitation. When questioned, Brenda admitted uncertainty about whether Katie and Henderson had an affair before the incident. Video evidence suggested Katie initially rejected Henderson's advances, but later seemed to consider them. Searches of Henderson's office and home uncovered evidence of medication experimentation. Expert witnesses confirmed that many of the compounds he created were likely intended as date rape drugs. During the trial, I finally got the full story of what happened to Katie. It turned out that Henderson had kept her alive over the weekend with drugs and alcohol. At some point during their festivities, she experienced severe chest pain and collapsed, unconscious. The men claimed they checked her but couldn't find a pulse. Instead of seeking immediate medical help, which was nearby, they assumed she was dead. After cleaning her up a bit, they placed her in a car trunk and buried her in Central Park. Under questioning by the U.S. attorney, none of them admitted to having CPR training or medical qualifications. Their fate was sealed when a medical examiner found soil in her lungs matching that of the burial site, indicating she was buried alive. Some jury members visibly reacted to this revelation. At the trial's conclusion, Jake, his 2 accomplices, and everyone involved in the weekend were found guilty on all charges. The judge opted against the death penalty, sentencing Jake to life in prison, along with Lenny and Harvey. Others received slightly lighter prison terms. Civil lawsuits against Ryder and Henderson followed the criminal trial. The company lost most of its customers and went into receivership. Henderson, after paying a substantial sum, filed for bankruptcy. The fallout from Henderson's scheme to betray me was far-reaching. Katie was dead, and he and his cohorts were bankrupt and imprisoned. The company vanished, leaving hundreds unemployed. As for me, life moved forward. I sold the house and bought a 2-bedroom apartment. Closing the door on the house for the last time was bittersweet. However, I had my whole life ahead of me. My advisor suggested taking some time off, maybe a cruise to meet someone new. So, I booked a round-the-world cruise and headed to the airport, excited for the adventures that lay ahead. I opened my marriage, ended up cheating, and my husband proved he's the alpha by destroying me in court. Forever lasted for years, months, and days. My peaceful and predictable life started falling apart 2 weeks ago. I'm Mark, and Carly has been my wife for 3.5 years. We met at a career event during my master's degree, where she praised the company she worked for. Although my degree and her job didn't align, we clicked. After a few ordinary dates, things took off. She was 6 months out of an engagement, and I had been casually dating for the past 2 years. We spent most of our free time together. While she had a salaried position, I was knee-deep in my thesis. We were both cautious about closeness, but once it started, we knew we belonged together. We got married after my graduation, vowing our love would last forever. I found a job close enough for Carly to keep hers, working in network solutions in northern Indiana. As a project manager, I oversee a team of 12 and occasionally travel for client setups with a group of colleagues. I don't decide who travels. A group of project managers and my boss, Dennis, make those decisions. We aim to give everyone on-site experience. This time, I had 2 men and 3 women on my team, all older than me. Dealing with a challenging client, their experience was an asset. The first angry encounter didn't take long. We arrived at 8 a.m., had an introductory meeting, and began implementing our solution mid-morning. Their supposed expert lost his temper with Leanne, one of my qualified team members. I helped diffuse the situation with their site manager. Leanne was shaken, so I gave her time to recover in the coffee room. Unfortunately, the scene repeated itself after lunch. Their expert was sent home, and despite efforts to calm Leanne, I eventually sent her back to the hotel. She joined the team for dinner, and I invited them to join me for a run around the park. Leanne was the only one who accepted. While jogging, she suggested running away together, but I reminded her of company policies regarding relationships between managers and subordinates. Back in my room, I was perplexed by the conversation. I talked with Carly but didn't mention Leanne's actions. Leanne, always displeased with me being her superior, showed signs of disrespect. The next morning, I asked Leanne if everything was okay. "Currently, I'm fine, Mark," she replied. Thankfully, the day was uneventful. Their expert doubted our work but didn't lose his temper. My team and I had dinner, and during the evening, a disruptive guest caused a scene. After dinner, I jogged alone, talked with Carly, and watched the 10 p.m. news. A knock on my door revealed Leanne with her coat on. I greeted Leanne and inquired about her well-being. Noticing a change in her tone, she mentioned wanting to show me something and proceeded to reveal her body. I advised Leanne to cover up and declined her offer, suggesting she return to her room with plans. To see her in the morning, she responded with a mock-sad look and a smile before leaving. Recognizing the importance of informing Dennis, I sent an email seeking a private conversation about Leanne. The next morning, I approached Leanne and asked if everything was okay. She assured me that she was currently fine. While she demonstrated skill in her job, her behavior struck me as strangely odd. Dennis responded to my email later, expressing his intention to meet with me upon my return. Everything seemed normal for the rest of the trip back home. Leanne was as abrupt as usual. I hoped whatever caused those 2 strange nights was in the past. Foolishly, I received a text from Leanne on Sunday evening describing explicit content and emoticons. I hadn't seen Leanne since our plane landed on Friday evening. She likely sent the text meant for her lover to me by mistake. I didn't respond and planned to talk with her in the morning. The idea of Leanne with a lover was hard to imagine. Just saying. However, the same could easily be said about me. I mentioned to Leanne that I thought she had mistakenly sent me a text the previous night. She replied, "Mark, I didn't send anyone a text message last night." I chose not to press the issue. She was deeply involved in debugging a problem, and I had a busy day myself. On Tuesday night, Leanne sent a message which included a selfie. She expressed, "Could the closeness with you get any better? I don't think so," with more lovebird emoticons. I emailed Dennis again, reminding him of my request for a private conversation. He apologized for the delay but postponed it until next Monday. Leanne called in sick on Wednesday. As Dennis was out of town, I had to wait a day to confront her. My day was quite ordinary. Unexpectedly, someone called my name as I was getting into my car. Whatever hit me knocked me out, and I woke up in the hospital. The police updated me on Terry, Leanne's husband, who thought I was having an affair with her. He had violently attacked me, causing a concussion, 2 broken ribs, a hernia, and a broken hand. Terry left copies of Leanne's texts and pictures, colored to hide explicit content, next to my unconscious body. Unfortunately, he gave the same copies to Carly. Carly answered the first call, expressing her wish for my painful demise. I stayed in the hospital overnight for observation, and Carly refused to answer her phone. On Thursday, I took a cab home, and Carly wouldn't talk to me. Rather than starving, I ordered pizza. On Friday, despite the pain, I went to the office. In the afternoon, I learned I was on paid leave due to Terry's complaint. My hearing would be on Monday when Dennis returned. When I got home, Carly was dressed provocatively. I questioned Carly about her attire, expressing surprise at her early return and noting the note she left. She replied that she had a date. I warned her not to proceed, emphasizing the irreversible consequences. She responded, suggesting that I was being hypocritical, claiming innocence in the accusations her jealous husband made. According to her, he mistook her for someone else, and she hadn't done anything to jeopardize our marriage. She challenged me to produce proof, denying any response to the alleged texts and pictures. She asserted her complete innocence, expressing disbelief. She mentioned that she might or might not be back that night, advising me not to wait up for her. I reiterated my warning, but she dismissed it, setting in motion the end of our marriage. She revealed her intention to go on a date with someone from work as revenge for what she believed I had done. Her note echoed these sentiments, portraying me as worthless and indicating her intention to have some fun. After our argument, I tried to get comfortable but couldn't. I left a note for Carly explaining that something was really wrong, and I headed to the ER. It was 6 p.m. on Friday. Tests at the hospital revealed a ruptured spleen, and my brother was listed as my emergency contact. They operated, stitched the spleen, and then stitched me back together. I woke up to the beeping and humming sounds, drifting in and out of awareness until I found myself in a sun-filled room. Following their recommended diet, I sat contemplating my situation. My confusion was interrupted by my cell phone buzzing. Although the number was unfamiliar, I answered it. The caller accused me of being foolish, stating that I had been with her again last night. I defended myself, saying that Terry had the wrong person as I had been in the hospital since 6 p.m. the previous night. Silence followed. I reiterated that I went to the gym at 8 p.m. and was only gone for an hour. Terry mentioned a text from her that morning talking about the great closeness we had. I clarified that I had been on the operating table and was still at University Hospital in room 612. I assured Terry that I was not going anywhere that day and needed to get to the bottom of this. I promised to see her in a bit. I checked my messages and found a text from Leanne claiming that the closeness last night was so good. The floor nurse dropped by to check her vitals and change her drip. Overwhelmed, I felt like asking her for something to end this nightmare. She left, saying she'd be back to change my dressings. As soon as the nurse left, Carly entered my room, still dressed provocatively, and asked if I was okay. I assured Carly that I was fine and asked her to leave, expressing my desire for her not to be around. She pleaded, explaining that she was worried about me and had come right away when she read my note. In response, I stated that her staying out all night meant she ended our marriage, and I insisted she leave. My voice rose, prompting the floor nurse to inquire if everything was okay. I requested her assistance to escort Carly out, and security had to step in. I attempted to make sense of Leanne's actions, considering the possibility of revenge. I wondered. If it was due to my rejection of her or being her boss, it had to be one of those reasons. I speculated that she might have mistaken my phone number for someone else's, as nothing else made sense. Carly called my cell, expressing that our marriage was over and she wanted me to leave her alone. I responded, disagreeing with her, claiming she messed around and now acted self-righteous. She argued that I was wrong, asserting her innocence and stating that we were done. I hung up and she sent a text message saying, "We need to talk." I refused, stating, "No, we don't. Move your stuff out or set my stuff by the door." She questioned our connection, saying, "I thought we were soulmates." "Is that what you thought when you were having your revenge?" I retorted. "Is that what you thought when you were with your lover?" I didn't need this. Frustrated, I turned off my cell phone and requested morphine. Just before lunch, the nurse returned to change my dressings, starting with my face. Terry and Leanne knocked and asked if they could come in. Leanne reacted, exclaiming, "Oh my God, Mark, what happened to you?" "Hi, Leanne. This must be your husband, Terry, isn't it? What happened to your lip?" she asked, diverting her eyes. I explained. "I ran into a door. It happened in the employee parking lot. I don't know the status of the investigation at this point. Last night, they discovered I had a ruptured spleen. Nothing serious, just a few stitches fixed the problem. I knew Terry was the one who caused my injuries, and so did the police. Evidently, Terry hadn't informed Leanne about his encounter with the police." The nurse finished with my face and asked if I wanted my company to leave while she did the spleen surgery dressings. I replied, "No, let them stay." The nurse needed something, so she left, saying she would return shortly. Leanne took a seat on the chair, and Terry attempted to start a conversation. I gestured for Terry to come closer and quietly mentioned my concerns about Leanne's peculiar behavior on the last road trip, asking if she had been under pressure recently. Terry shared in a hushed tone that her mother had died in a car crash last Christmas and her sister had just started chemo for breast cancer. He added that she seemed to be dealing with it okay. The nurse returned, prompting Terry to back up against the wall, and the room fell silent. Carly stormed in, yelling at me and Leanne. The nurse called security, and Terry restrained Carly until security arrived. After the peace was restored, the nurse continued her work, and Leanne got up, standing close enough to hold my hand. Leanne expressed, "Last night was awesome. We need to go to that beach again. The closeness with you is so good." Terry, myself, and the attending nurse stared in disbelief. The nurse looked at Terry and mentioned, "Don't let her leave. I'll be right back." Terry wrapped Leanne in a hug, silently conveying, "I'm so sorry." After about 5 minutes, the nurse and a pair of doctors escorted Terry and Leanne from the room. I had all afternoon to replay the entire 2 weeks, realizing there were two very different Leanne personalities. Several hours later, Terry returned, expressing his apologies. He inquired about Leanne's odd behavior, and when I mentioned the angry encounter, he lit up. "I'll be right back," he said. He returned with a doctor, and I repeated my story. Terry began explaining, "Mark, when Leanne was a child, she was mentally traumatized quite severely. Her father was relentless in his verbal mistreatment of her. She has been in the midst of a nervous breakdown since last week's encounter. You said she did something strange the day after her work encounter. Was there any conflict involving her that day?" I said no, but then remembered the guest and the tray. The doctor joined in. "That would do it. She has what we call dissociative identity disorder. Basically, she has dual personalities. It is usually a reaction to trauma as a way to help a person avoid bad memories. You must have been the person who interceded on her behalf. You made an imprint on her fantasy personality." Terry asked about Sunday and Tuesday, and I explained about the lawnmower incident and the angry encounter. He inquired about the knockdown fight on the previous night, and I shared that she was upset about the complaint I had filed against him. Terry expressed his regret, understanding the impact on my life. The doctor explained, "Very little can be done. She needs extensive counseling to help her understand what's happened to her. People get over it. It just takes time." Terry apologized again and left. Even though she had turned my life upside down, I really did feel sorry for Leanne. They informed me that I would likely be released by noon on Sunday if I had an uneventful evening. I sent an email to Dennis asking him to please contact Terry, as there had been some pertinent developments. I scrolled through the text messages from Carly, a whole lot of anger being vented towards me. It saddened me to think that this strange set of circumstances had ended my marriage. I played the voicemails, but her attempts to justify her actions only fueled my anger. They all hit the trash can. On Sunday, I drove back to find my house as I had left it. Carly had not moved out, and my stuff was still there. I started packing what I thought I'd need for the next week. Dennis called around 3 p.m. and asked if he could drop by. He said everyone was convinced I was not at fault and had done nothing wrong. My attempt to talk to him about Leanne, along with Terry explaining her medical issue, had satisfied all of higher management's concerns. I was reinstated, and this would be expunged from my employment history. Leanne had been placed on unpaid leave. I had just placed the last sack in my car when Carly pulled into the driveway. She accused me of planning to run away, calling me a coward. I explained that Leanne had a nervous breakdown and her. Allegations were untrue. Leanne was under observation at the university, and I suggested talking to Terry for confirmation. Despite my decision to cut my losses and move on, Carly pleaded for me to stay, claiming it was a misunderstanding. Carly insisted that Leanne made up the accusations and apologized, asking me not to leave. I firmly stated that I couldn't spend the next 40 years worried, emphasizing that I wouldn't stay married to a woman who used her personal life as a weapon of revenge. Despite Carly's pleas and apologies, I shook my head, closed my car door, and expressed my determination not to see or hear from her again. Carly continued to beg me not to go, suggesting we could overcome the misunderstanding. I expressed disbelief at her characterization of the situation as a misunderstanding, noting the change in tone in her messages and voicemails. Despite my hopes for an amicable divorce, the judge ordered counseling sessions influenced by Carly's statement that she didn't want a divorce. Reluctantly, I attended the sessions to avoid any damage to my reputation. The first counseling session took a negative turn as the counselor attempted a divide-and-conquer approach. Carly presented her case, and then we swapped chairs. The counselor asked me to share my feelings, and I reiterated that I wouldn't stay married to a woman who used her personal life as a weapon of revenge. Carly's attempts to understand my feelings and salvage the marriage were met with my resolute stance. I repeated that I wouldn't stay married to a woman who used her personal life as a weapon of revenge. Carly's plea for more communication and cooperation fell on deaf ears, and I left the session, brushing away her attempt to stop me. As the counseling sessions continued, I maintained my refusal to cooperate. Carly persisted in discussing our feelings, but I hummed a song to drown out her attempts. Despite the counselor's efforts, the sessions deepened the divide between us. After complying with the court-ordered sessions, my attorney informed me that we needed to appear before the judge. The judge granted the petition for divorce, acknowledging the irreparable nature of the relationship. Carly's persistent pursuit of me continued after the legal resolution, with her waiting for me after work and running into me at the grocery store. I chose not to explain her actions, and her text messages inviting me out on dates were met with my resistance. Eventually, I found a way to slow down her advances. I responded to Carly's offer to go out on a date by informing her that my new wife would prefer her not to communicate with me anymore. I wished her a great life, and surprisingly, that seemed to work for a week. When she insisted that I wasn't married, I clarified that I hadn't said I was, but when I do find a new wife, that's what she will say. I requested her to move on, claiming that I already had. Although her persistence made me anticipate complications in my attempts to find another woman now, as I try to navigate the dating scene, it becomes evident that I'm not particularly skilled at it. Despite my efforts, nobody I've encountered so far lives up to the image I had of Carly. However, I'm not in a rush. An acquaintance from accounting, a divorcee, showed interest, and I sought Dennis's approval before asking her out. After a few dates, she expressed a desire for a friends with benefits relationship. The morning after I spent the night with her for the first time, Carly sent a text. Carly questioned whether I loved this new woman, deeming it none of her business. In response, I curtly stated that my feelings were not her concern and conveyed that I still loved her. I added a brief apology, closing the conversation. Too little, too late. In the back of my mind, I can see you all watching my demise play out on Dateline. Leanne returned to work and was placed under the supervision of another manager. I do my best to avoid her. She has never said or done anything odd again. The police didn't want or need me to cooperate to convict Terry. The security cameras provided everything they needed. I did appear at his sentencing to ask the court for lenience. He was given a suspended sentence, but he still has a felony conviction. I've been married to Kathy for more than 30 years. We met when we were young, and now I'm 59 and she's 55. We have 3 adult children. Our life together has had its good and bad times, but we've always been there for each other. Kathy means the world to me. Kathy has some friends who believe in things like feminism, identity politics, and social justice. It's a bit different from what I think, but that's okay. People have their own ideas about these topics. Kathy and I sometimes talk about these things and try to understand each other's viewpoints. I did not pay much attention to these ideas that Kathy had or was starting to develop. For me, they were all nonsense. Kathy had some strong views about how women were oppressed for a long time, which sometimes scared me. She personally hadn't experienced oppression or discrimination. I found these discussions unsettling, so I often tried to change the subject when they came up. I have seen these woke women on TV shouting and talking nonsense, screaming at people when they didn't have any logical answers. I worried that Kathy was getting influenced by them. One day, she started questioning our marriage, saying it had become dull. I suggested therapy to work on our relationship, but she wanted to go on a solo vacation instead. I reluctantly agreed, but later found out she went with her friends who I thought were toxic. When Kathy returned from her vacation a week later, she looked like a completely different person. She had cut her hair short, and there was an unusual aura about her. It felt like she was someone I had never met before. She didn't hug me or show any affection when she arrived, which was unsettling and made me feel like a stranger to her. Kathy continued to spend more time with her friends and engage in protests, some of which I didn't support. I had a serious conversation with her, expressing my concerns about the direction she was heading. I told her that she needed to reconsider her choices. However, she didn't listen and continued with her activities. Things escalated when she was detained for participating in a protest that disrupted traffic. I had to pick Kathy up from the police station, and during the ride home we had a very heated conversation. She remained silent throughout, which left me even more concerned about what was happening with her. Kathy began using social media, specifically TikTok, to share her feminist ideas. She started gaining a decent following, and it became clear that she was investing a significant amount of time and effort into her videos. She would spend hours getting dressed and creating her content for the platform. Her social media activities seemed to be consuming a lot of her time and energy. One day, I came across a video from Kathy that left me horrified due to its message. In the video, she discussed the desire to avoid becoming a miserable older woman, while emphasizing the common trajectory of raising a family and working hard. She pointed out that many women realize in their 50 or 60 that they have nothing for themselves, leading to resentment. Kathy suggested the need to create individual lives, something exclusive for personal fulfillment. Even in good marriages, she noted, unhappiness could persist. Divorce might not be necessary, but finding what brings fulfillment and a sense of truly living one's life was crucial. Kathy encouraged living each day to the fullest, enjoying good marriages, and maintaining individuality apart from spouses and children. She urged women to break free from routine, explore the world, and discover fulfillment and happiness beyond their roles as mothers. I felt that she was encouraging women to get divorced. I went home that evening and confronted her. To my shock, she said that she was leaving and had already packed her bags. I tried to stop her, but she shot back, saying that she was bored with her life and wanted freedom and happiness. She did not want the responsibilities of being a grandma or my wife. She wanted to enjoy her life and explore more outside what she called this prison. I was speechless and felt that I had lost my wife to toxic people who had poisoned her mind. I did not stop her and just said, "I'll miss you. Come back as soon as your exploring is over." She moved into a smaller apartment in the center of the city. I informed my kids about their mother, and they all said that she was just going through a phase and would get back home soon. I agreed and waited for her. My wait was cut short and turned to shock as I received the divorce papers. She had all this planned and was not in any phase. I called Kathy, but she did not answer. My kids, during this time, did try to talk their mother out of divorce, but she shut them down as well. A few weeks later, we had our divorce settled, and after 30 years of marriage, I was single. The following day, Kathy shared a new video expressing that she had accomplished the move to her new place, which she described as feeling like a princess bed. She mentioned the rain during the previous day's move. That day, she woke up with a different feeling, free, as if a weight had been lifted. She felt genuinely excited for the first time in years, although her place was still somewhat disorganized due to unpacking, and the apartment was relatively small, requiring intense organization. She conveyed gratitude for this change. After a couple of weeks of continuous moving, she had finally settled into her new apartment. Kathy mentioned that she would provide a tour of it tomorrow. At that moment, she just wanted to say hello. Additionally, she mentioned that her very handsome boyfriend was making dinner for her, emphasizing that life was good. I was angry and heartbroken. She broke my home and now has broken my heart. My kids also saw the video, called me to console me, and asked me to move on with my life. Eventually, I did move on and found an amazing woman, Maya, who was in her early 40s. She was a high school teacher and was single. We hit it off instantly and have been going steady. I never informed my ex-wife, and I did not think it was important. I planned a trip with my kids and Maya so that everyone could know each other and get along. Maya asked me to invite my ex-wife, Kathy, as she felt it was important for her to know that there was someone in my life. So I called Kathy and invited her. Initially, she did not agree to join our trip. I did not tell her about Maya, but then my daughter later called her and asked her to join, informing her that the invitation would not be extended again. I had hired an amazing boat ride for all of us, and Kathy was the last to join us. She came alone. I introduced her to Maya and told her how happy I am with Maya. I wish I could have clicked a picture of Kathy at that very moment. Her face was red, and it seemed that she was not expecting me to get a life for myself. Throughout the trip, I enjoyed Kathy's disgust toward Maya and me. Although Maya had a noble intention, I was really enjoying the results. A few days later, we came across another video of Kathy where she revealed that the recent days had been highly traumatic for her. Despite acknowledging that it wasn't entirely her fault, she took some blame for the distressing situation. Kathy shared that she anticipated a strong physical and emotional reaction upon discovering that her estranged husband was in a new relationship. Despite being separated for a year, they had still spent some family time together, and he had assured her multiple times that he wasn't involved with someone else. However, this turned out to be untrue. Kathy expressed uncertainty about joining the trip, fearing her ex-husband might misinterpret her intentions. Despite these concerns, her daughter convinced her to participate, suggesting that he might not extend another invitation. In hindsight, Kathy understood the reason for her daughter's advice. She clarified that what hurt her the most wasn't the fact that he was in a new relationship as she had a boyfriend herself, but the fact that he hadn't informed her. She had felt secure, believing he still harbored love for her. He even invited me on a trip with him and our daughters, which I accepted. However, during the trip, I discovered some hurtful texts, and it was horrifying, she admitted. The trauma that followed was intense. I had a physical and emotional breakdown, and I felt like I had completely lost control of my emotions. It was a terrible experience, and I'm struggling to cope with it. Her upset wasn't about losing me, it was more about losing the exclusive access to my resources and the stability I provided. The specific trigger was when she discovered I was telling another woman that I loved her, not just that we were involved romantically. Unlike Kathy's boyfriend, who was only interested in casual relationships and typically didn't invest financially or emotionally in her, when a man like me is in love, he often wants to build a life with the woman he loves. For Kathy, the real trauma was losing her place in my life to another woman. I began receiving numerous calls from Kathy where she expressed her remorse and reminded me that I had once asked her to come back. In response, I told her that it was too late and that she would no longer be a part of my life. That boat has sailed, I said. She had made her choice, created her own circumstances, and now needed to live with the consequences of her decisions. A few days later, we came across another video from Kathy where she shared that things weren't going well for her. She reflected on how life used to be good and questioned whether the difficulties were her fault, considering herself possibly selfish or self-centered. Kathy expressed her struggle with the artificiality and pretense around her. She admitted she was fine initially, but now the reality of the separation was sinking in. Acknowledging that it was just a separation and that there were worse things in the world, Kathy remained uncertain about what her future held. She could only remember the positive aspects and found it challenging to recall anything negative. Kathy reminisced about a lovely woman who was once a close friend, revealing that she had been invited to dinner by this person and had bought gifts for their children. Despite being at home with her own family, Kathy decided to join this other family for dinner. She expressed a sense of missing her own family and the struggle of being without them. Kathy confessed that being a family meant a lot to her, and she pondered whether enduring misery would be worthwhile if it meant having her family back. Without them, she felt lost about her identity. Teary-eyed, Kathy clarified that her emotions weren't due to drinking but stemmed from the profound difficulties she was facing. She wished everyone a happy Saturday and expressed hope that she would be okay later, acknowledging the profound sense of loss she felt. Kathy concluded by mentioning her plan to go sit with another family who had invited her, appreciating the gesture but acknowledging that it wasn't an easy situation for her. My daughter called me, asking me to do something, but I told them, "Your mother chose this life." I did try to stop her. She wanted freedom. She has freedom. She has a new love life and can explore the world as she wants. My daughter agreed and said that while she agreed with every word I said, she couldn't help but feel for her mother's bad choices. A few days later, there was another video. "Good morning," Kathy began. "Sometimes I wonder what I'm doing and why I made the choices I did. Last night I had a dream about my estranged husband. He came to me saying he'd hurt his hand badly and was crying. In the dream, he needed my help, and I suggested moving in to take care of him. It felt like we were starting over, the way things used to be. It was an upsetting dream, and it's not even possible. It's just how dreams are, I guess." My body is telling me that I still love him and always will, but things are different now. Sometimes I get angry and think, why doesn't he believe that I should have a fair share? He wants to give me some money, but it's not enough. All the things we have were partly because of me. My parents lent us money, and I played a significant role in helping him, encouraging him, and being there for him even when things went wrong. I made mistakes, and I paid for them, especially when I left. It seems like everything he did was okay, but everything I did was my fault. I'm constantly blamed for everything. So now I'm at this point in my life. He has more money than I do, and I'm struggling to find a decent place to live. Some people, especially men, think that women don't deserve anything, that they're freeloaders and should just fend for themselves. After 30 years of taking care of someone, I feel undervalued, like I have no worth. It's hard. I saw the video and felt that she has now lost her mind. She did receive her share of fortune as part of the divorce settlement. I did everything by the book, and as per the law, she cannot gaslight me and make me look like a villain in this story, nor can she blame me for her bad choices. I wanted to retaliate and sue her for her video, but Maya stopped me and asked me to ignore her. My kids called Kathy and told her to apologize for what she posted, or she would be cut off from everyone's life. Kathy, having no choice, did post a lame apology citing her mental health as the reason. I got married to Maya a few days later, and I unfollowed Kathy on all my social media.